Hey there, folks. This is Lucifer, LeGivorden. I'm here with a number of guests tonight, and I will be introducing you to them. Of course, a number of my more recent viewers and whatnot will obviously recognize Brett Keane from the Brett Keane Show. He has been working very closely with us on this recent issue with the Church of Satan. People will also recognize Cain Blackfire, Grand Archon of the Satanic Thulian Society and the second in command. Another person that to take note of is Christopher Lee Anderson, the Archon of the Satanic Thulian Society, the third in our command structure. And he will be adding some of his wisdoms. Cain and Chris represent two different denominations of LaVeyan Satanism, respectively, alongside my own, which I stick to primarily just basic LaVeyanism. But Cain Blackfire represents the Setian branch of the Satanic Thulian Society, while Christopher Lee Anderson comes from the vampiric branch. So he will be representing the vampiric Satanism, whatnot. He is a former Church Satan member, if I'm correct, Chris, and a former Temple of the Vampire member. Yep, he's confirming. And finally, last but not least, we have Priest Zagan Rex, third degree. He is a therapist in the Satanic Thulian Society and holds the title of confessor. That is a very unique position within the Satanic Thulian Society, meant for another unique position of ours, which only presently two members, Cain and myself, hold. So how is everybody doing?
Yeah, a little bit under the weather, but pushing forward like always.
It seems like a lot of people are being under the weather, are a little bit under the weather today. Brett, I heard you're a bit under the weather yourself.
Yeah, it's been some bad weather for me, man.
Bad weather. Bad weather. Well, for the last guest on our show, people will recognize this guy. If you're a longtime viewer of mine, you may not have seen him, but good old Pinhead is joining us tonight, and he's providing some much-needed caffeine. So, all right. So, we'll go around. We'll just let everybody make their own introductions. Cain, let's go ahead and start with you.
Well, those who watched the last time, I'm Cain Blackfire. I'm the second in command of the Satanic Thulian Society, and I am the grotto master for the state of Ohio and its surrounding states until we get grottos in those areas. I've been with the Satanic Thulian Society for 2 years. It feels like it's a lot longer than that. And I'm ready to get into these topics and sort them out.
Yeah, honestly, it feels like you've been with us since almost the beginning. Actually, I think you have been, because it took you a year before you got your priesthood.
Yeah. But it feels like it's been like 10, 20 years how it feels.
Yeah, it really has. For those who don't know, Cain and I, we did not start off on good terms. We were actually butting heads. I called him out on some bullshit, and he didn't like it, and he threw a temper tantrum, and then he ended up getting eaten alive by me, and after that, we became good friends.
Right.
So, and now he is, if something ever happens to me, he's going to run the show.
That's right.
So, all right. Well, thanks, Cain, and we will be getting back to you guys. Chris, go ahead.
I'm Christopher Lee Anderson. I am the Archon of the Satanic Thulian Society. I'm also the Grotto Master of the Lone Star Grotto here in Texas. Like was mentioned, I am a former member of the Church of Satan. I left due to different reasons of my own. I was also an adept in the Temple of the Vampire. I look forward to bringing both of those traditions back underneath the same umbrella with the Satanic Thulian Society and helping bring all the different denominations back to where they belong, back to their roots. I'm a very strong Levian Satanist, but I also have very strong vampiric viewpoints. And that's about it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Zagan, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us, what is a confessor?
Well, my name is Zagan Arax, and confessor, it combines, it's metaphysical counseling, in other words, but of course with a satanic viewpoint, which in my opinion is the only viewpoint that really matters. I mean, in my counseling and the job that I've done, it's all about empowering other people to be themselves. Like, you get out of yourself and be yourself and be the best that you can. Ultimate Thule. And so to me, it's a natural progression and blend of spirituality and psychology into one. And everything's confidential. Honestly, it's not a matter of like somebody sharing something I want to share with the whole world. It's a matter of like, it's between you and yourself, and of course Satan. So that's a little bit about the confessor role. As far as for me, I identify as a Satanist since childhood. But as far as getting involved with organizations, I would say, STS about what, like 3-4 years ago. Then
Yeah, you're one of our earliest members. You dropped out for a while to get yourself sorted around.
yeah.
Then you came back around about a year later. So yeah, you've been in it for pretty much almost since the word go off and on.
Yeah.
And you just recently got ordained.
Yeah, last June. Last June I did. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about that will lead into, I think this kind of leads into everything, like just kind of connecting and bringing back what Satanism is really about. Not this atheistic standpoint, but more of it's freaking real. And people that deny it don't feel it. And it's just weird to me. So I think in that sense, I'm glad to be part of SDS.
Certainly, we love having you here. For those who don't understand what the role of a confessor is, we deliberately chose the name confessor because of the heretical contradiction of the Catholic Church taking confession and whatnot. And for this particular role, the job that Zagan has to do behind the scenes, it is a very fitting title, because in the Catholic Church, you go to confession, talk to the priest in order to kind of vent some of your problems and get counsel on how to approach life. Well, Zagan provides a very interesting role for Kane and I, as we are the only two members of STS, and we are like two of 4 Satanists in the entire world who are actually skilled, trained, and authorized to perform the exorcism. And yes, Brett, I said exorcism. We actually do that, and we have done it. And so Zagan helps us psychologically to make sure that we have our shit together up here for that, because anybody who knows anything about exorcism knows you cannot walk into that if your head's not on straight, and if you do, you'll get totally fucked with whatever you're exercising. So thank you, Zagan. Brett, if you want to go ahead, and I'm pretty sure we have some of your people in here. We have some of, I can see STS members are flowing in and whatnot. So share with us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I can be found at YouTube at Brett Keene, also Brett Keene Show on Twitter. I originally got into the discussion because I'm a Christian, and I got into a talk with a the Church of Satan, and they claim that the Church of Satan is about atheism, that it's another kind of sect of atheism. Well, from what I did read and what I studied and researched having to do with Satanism, Satanism was originally theistic, that Satan was actually believed to exist. So in order to find this out, I ended up looking into the founder, LeVay, and made a video about him, which you seem to enjoy and commend me on. And I've also been recently, even though sick, looking at some quotes. May I share a quote with you by LeVay real quick? This is from the Satanic Bible itself.
Oh, of course. You're always welcome to quote the Satanic Bible with us. It's a pretty wonderful book, except for Peter Gilmore's entry, but we will discuss that another time. Go ahead. Oh, and we just call him LeVay, not LeVayan. LeVayan is the system of Satanism that we practice. His name is just LeVay or Anton LeVay or Anton Szandor LeVay.
I appreciate the correction. I always get names wrong. If somebody says Bob, I say Boob. I don't know what the hell's wrong with me. It's one of my curses. But here's the quote. Satanism is not a white light religion. It is a religion of the flesh, the mundane, the carnal, all of which are ruled by Satan, the personification of the left-hand path. It seems to me, even whenever I look at his writings, he is still pushing for a theistic concept of Satan being real.
All right, so we're going to go to open mic where anybody can just jump in and respond to any of this for a while, and we're going to discuss this. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and just say yes. When you read Anton LeVay, pretty much any of his writing, especially the pre-1975 stuff, which is what everybody really focuses on, it is definitely very theistic. Absolutely, 100%. You guys can jump in now. Open mic.
Hey, Brett, you said you're Christian, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I know that when I was reading the Bible, the Holy Bible, and Jesus was talking to his disciples, he said, you can talk about me, you can talk about the Father, but you can never talk about the Holy Spirit. So even those two theistically worship the Holy Spirit. It was above all rest, but it had no actual physical form. They just had representations of it. The dove, the light, everything that they had was representations of it. And sometimes I think of the spirit of Satan being about the same way. Though we don't, we talk about the underlying dark current of energy that flows through the universe, trying to put a fathomable image on something that's infinite and unfathomable. Sometimes we put it in a smaller form, which is where we get the anthropomorphic shapes like the Baphomet and stuff like that to symbolize.
Yeah, the guy with red skin, horns, looks like a really handsome devil.
Well, the fact that you guys were talking just a moment ago about how you've had personal experiences with exorcisms tells me that it's obvious that you've seen some stuff. You've actually experienced it. And I don't know if I should say it like this, but I feel as though atheists hijacked your religion. And I even said
absolutely. Actually, the new issue of the Cloven Hoof just got published internally to STS today. In about 2 weeks, it's going to be published to the world at large. And there is an article in there that is literally titled Atheist Invasion. And it's talking about how COS hijacked Satanism. And we're going to be discussing the Barton letter to Tanny Jantsang here in a little bit. And she actually says some very interesting things in that letter. I don't know how many people watched my video on it, but it would appear that Blanche Barton in this letter indicates that she has foreknowledge of a plan to rewrite Anton LeVay's philosophy, essentially hijacking Satanism.
Yeah, I really find that so interesting that somebody from an outsider's perspective, use the exact words that you use, hijack the Church of Satan, because that's exactly what happened. And it just hijacked it, just turned it into something that is totally not hijacked by atheists. And I think that's been a focus of like frustration and contention since I was 13 years old, when I'm reading this stuff. It's all theistic, and I'm looking into, what's this about? What's this organization about today? And then it's like, oh no, it's about atheism. And it's like, no, like those experiences that I've had throughout my childhood were very vivid, very real. You can't just say, well, I'm going to explain it away and just say, well, it's just my crazy imagination. Like, no, when you feel it in your bones and in your hands, and you see things, like, this isn't just delusion. And they try to explain it away in such a manner that it's not even using psychology. You're not even convincing anybody that it's just atheism. That's how it is, whatever. And that's it. And that's the end of the argument. Well, they don't even want to come to the table and even have a debate or argument. When they do, it's too late. So I just find that very interesting. Hijacked by atheists. It's true.
I'm also going to go out there and say, and I know Brett and I, we've spoken about it a little bit, and I know Kane and I and Chris and I, we've all spoken about this behind the scenes a little bit in some of my studies and whatnot. People have also seen me make posts about Buddhism and whatnot on how that's not atheistic, yet it is always being portrayed as being an atheist religion, except when you actually look into it, it is anything but. It would seem to me that, atheists are trying to hijack religions. And I'm also going to point out that if you read the Satanic Bible, Wanted, God, Dead or Alive, there in that article by Anton LaVey, Anton LaVey made a very interesting comment near the end, where it was literally the one time out of that entire chapter, out of the entire book, that Anton LaVey himself mentions atheists. And it is when he's referring to Christian atheists, and he's criticizing them for calling themselves Christian atheists, for taking on a religion yet identifying as atheists, and he's criticizing them. I see Zagan's got the Satanic Bible open right now. Can you go ahead and read that section to us?
Sure. All right. With all the contradictions in the Christian scriptures, many people currently cannot rationally accept Christianity the way it has been practiced in the past. Great numbers of people are beginning to doubt the existence of God, the established Christian sense of the word. So they have taken to calling themselves Christian atheists. True, the Christian Bible is a mass of contradictions, but what could be more contradictory than the term Christian atheist? The last part is, if prominent leaders of the Christian faith are rejecting the past interpretation of God, how then can their followers be expected to adhere to previous religious tradition? With all the debates about whether or not God is dead, if he isn't, he had better have Medicare. Okay.
Your mic's muted, sir.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just got the alert there. You guys have any thoughts on that? Kane, Chris, Brett?
Well, I would probably say really quickly, too, another thing that the Church of Satan seems to be trying to do is they also want to take the religion out of satanic religion, which is very odd because from what I've been looking at, and I'm not as well versed as you guys, obviously, but you guys have a philosophy, you have tenets, you have a code, you've seen spirits, you've had the experiences. So I don't know how it could be anything but officially a religion. Go ahead.
I'm going to defer to Chris here because he is the former Church of Satan member here. He has the hands-on experience, and he can literally tell you what it's like on the inside of the Church of Satan.
I know one of my biggest problems whenever I came in was a lot like the person in the article where they wrote and said, hey, I thought I was coming into an actual religion where we, united ourselves with the devil, the powers of Satan, like it says in the Bible. But then you get in there and everybody pish-poshes it. They make it into ritual magic is nothing more than therapy. They take the spiritualism or, Satan out of everything other than just in word say. It just does not feel like when you read the first books of LeVay. And I think that was what got me in trouble so much when I was there, was because I was constantly questioning things about that. How can you perform actual magic if you don't believe anything outside of yourself? And I came to think that the reason that they started taking all the magic and the religious aspects out of it and turn it into philosophy is because it's a lot like how LeVay said that we don't stand in circles of salt on the ground. We put them up on the wall so that we can unite ourselves with dark forces, opposed to isolating ourselves from those forces we call upon. But that's what it feels like the Church of Satan is doing anymore, is they're drawing a salt ring on the ground and they're calling it atheism and they're calling it philosophy as opposed to what it actually is. Because I don't know, maybe one of them got spooked by something they saw, but they're no longer uniting themselves with those forces we call upon. It's no wonder everything goes against them.
Absolutely, yeah. And even Anton LaVey, when you look at some of his other things that he's been spoken about and whatnot, there's at least two different stories about this, two different projections of it, but they both line up very closely. Anton LaVey actually went out. This was about 12 years after she passed away. Marilyn Monroe, as everybody knows, Anton LaVey was very much so a fan of Marilyn Monroe. The story is they actually dated before he was known as Anton LaVey, before she got famous and everything, and that they had a relationship. No one knows on how true that part is, but about 12 years after she died, the moon phase, the lunar phase, lined back up perfectly. The stars were almost in perfect alignment once again. And as the story goes, Diane Haggerty, and we lost Chris. Diane Haggerty, and at least one other friend of theirs went, and they went to Marilyn Monroe's house, and near the stroke of midnight, they had parked. They weren't allowed on the property. I guess they had spoken to the owners, and they were looking for permission. That the house was now owned by someone else, but they had gotten permission not to be on the property, but to park up against the gate and kind of set their bumper on the gate, as long as they weren't doing any damage. And near the stroke of midnight, Anton LaVey started speaking some sort of funny language, some funny gibberish language. Us Satanists know that he was probably speaking the Enochian keys. And lo and behold, Marilyn shows up in both versions of the story. A woman who looks just like Marilyn showed up, walked to the car. There was a silent wind going. It was like the wind was going crazy, but no one could hear a thing. And she walked through the gate and disappeared into the property. This is the sort of thing that we as Satanists, we commonly see. A lot of us do get into ghost hunting, and a lot of us are accepting of the paranormal, that there is something that continues after death. And I'm sorry, but if you're an atheist, and you don't accept that sort of behavior right there.
May I ask about something? Mr. Anderson came up with I sounded like the Matrix on that, didn't I? You had said that one of your theories was someone might have got spooked and then decided to change it all around. Has it ever crossed you guys' mind that the atheists took it over for profit? so they could sell objects and use it for just simply a means of attention, as opposed to obviously the love and care that you have for what you believe?
I know that is almost certainly what they do. But hands down, from what we're going to see here in the Barton letter, here in just a little bit, that it seems to me that there was an ongoing plot for many years to take over the Church of Satan. For what reason, we can only speculate. But I know, Brett, you and I have discussed it with TTOR as well as others, but we see that atheists invade these religions seemingly just to destroy them from the inside out. Like we mentioned the other day, there's that one guy who wants to do brain surgery on everybody to stop them from being theistic.
Are you familiar with you probably are you familiar with a man called Reverend Jimmy Jones, the People's Temple?
Yeah.
I ended up getting a hold of some FBI audio of the guy, and also recording of him in his church. He was an atheist, but a lot of people thought he was Christian, and as you know how that ended up happening, he ended up taking out almost 1,000 people by putting poison in the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I mean, why do atheists do these things? What is their interest in religion? This is something that I've always wondered. Kane, you've been really quiet tonight.
Just letting everyone say what they need to say, and when I get got to. I'm not in a hurry.
Well, you can jump in anytime, bro. So what's your thoughts on all this?
I believe that everyone to each their own. If you want to be an atheistic Satanist, in my opinion, that's fine. But don't attack other people for what they want to do and how they believe in things. I mean, we have many different branches of Satanism. I don't understand why there has to be an attack on things that, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. If you don't believe in an actual Satan, I don't understand what the big deal is. Now, if you actually believe in Satan and you're upset because people are using your religion, and that's fine too. But you can't just only be upset when one person does something but not expect it back. You just can't. You just can't.
I used to think where theistics and atheistics could get along quite well and work together. The atheistics could utilize our rituals for therapy like they claim to be able to do. But as time goes on and I start getting attack, and I start seeing the same tactics used on me that was used on Blanche Barton to browbeat her into submission and whatnot, I have to say, I remember Adam, before he left us, he was very dead set and very anti-atheist. And I have to say, I'm right there next to him and saying, anymore, atheists and theistics cannot get along. We should not be in the same room together. We should not be in the same organization together. It's like oil and water, and then you add gasoline on top of it and you light everything up with rocket fuel. It's not going to work.
Well, it's like putting someone from the Westboro Baptist Church in here with us. I mean, that just wouldn't fly. Just wouldn't work. Just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Well, what about this thought process? Maybe this is something, because whenever I don't know if a lot of you know this, but I used to be a former atheist, and I seen how non-believers acted towards Satanists, especially the theistic ones. It seems as though they take what LeVay said very personal whenever he says the devil has kept the Christianity in business, the church in business. So they figure they get rid of Satan, then there's no more advertisement for God. Wipe out the devil, then they don't have to argue how that's possible, but not God. See, that's a conflict for an atheist.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, at the same time, go ahead, Chris.
Your mic's off.
I said that depends on the aspect of it, though, because it says that Satan's kept the church in business all this time, but there's always going to be opposition, and that's what Satan is the opposition. So no matter what religion or philosophy or political power they come up with, Satan, as the opposer, is always going to be there, and there's always going to be people follow him. So we're always going to keep whoever we're opposing in business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, also the church has always kept itself in business utilizing Satan. The fear of roasting in the pits of hell and getting poked in the ass by a flaming pitchfork from this guy with horns
8 nights in hell.
has always kept people parking their butts back in the pews and keeping the collection plates, full.
I don't know if you knew this about me, but I'm what you refer to as an annihilationist. I don't know if I pointed that out to you yet.
You mentioned that before. Could you go ahead and explain it?
Sure. It means that I don't believe in an eternal place where people will be tortured and screaming and going through all kinds of just terrible nonsense for the rest of eternity. I believe there's over 80 verses in the Bible that states that the soul dies, and they call it the second death. So I don't believe in, people believing wrong or doing the wrong thing and then getting tormented by God forever.
So the Catholics don't believe that either, and neither do the Islams. I know people think that when you go to hell, you stay there for eternity. But in Islam, they believe that 90% of the community, when they die, is going to hell, no matter what. It's going to happen. And there's only a small percentage that Allah takes straight to the afterlife. They believe that you are to suffer for a period of time, and once you're done suffering, then you get to go to heaven. And the Catholics believe the same thing. They believe that you will go to hell for a time, and after so long, you will be sent to heaven. But that's something that's taught in Catholic school, like catechism, when you want to become Catholic. Catholics never learn that. Most Catholics don't, unless they actually went to the Catholic training to become Catholic, or if they went to seminary.
And I'm going to add really quickly that a lot of other cultures believe the same exact thing. When you look at Chinese culture, a lot of Asian cultures, they have many different hells that you go and you get judged for your misdeeds and you get sentenced to these places in hell, but you're not going there permanently. It's meant to cleanse you to be reincarnated or move on to your paradise or whatnot. It's so when you do enter that paradise, you enter that paradise with a clean soul. It's not that you're actually being tormented. And it's very similar for us Satanists. We believe that when you die, whatever personal problems and hangups that you have not addressed in your life will be magnified in hell, and you will have to eventually address those issues head on. We don't think that any demons are going to torture you. You literally become, your own torture and your own problems, your own personal hangups, what we call the condemnations, the satanic condemnations. Literally, you create your own demons, and you have to address them. You have to face them. You have to move past them, and only then can you choose to either be reincarnated or to move on into the paradise areas of hell, because there is paradise areas. We believe that hell certainly came from the Greek afterlife, and so the Elysium fields, the Isles of, I forget what the name is. It's like the ultimate Isles. You had to be like reincarnated 3 times in a row and gotten it right 3 times in a row in order to get into it. The Isles of the Blessed, that's what it is. We believe that all of this is there, especially in the city of Dis. in Dante's Inferno, we saw the city of Dis from the exterior, and it looked like this, obviously from Dante's perspective, a really bad place. But in our philosophy and our understanding, once you get in there, it's literally a city where the souls who have come to be at peace have learned to understand themselves, and they're perfectly okay. They're the wardens of hell, and they're there to help guide other souls. Most of the problems that we see in stories like Dante's Inferno, it is from people who have done shit to themselves and they haven't gotten past it. It's all self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it is. In Setianism, we believe that when we pass into the next world, it's a world that we have created on Earth, that we have created here on Earth, but in the afterlife, just like Diablo Khan, when Satan left heaven, he went to the furthest reaches of the universe and he created hell, his own personal domain. And Setians believe that we have the same power, that we can create our afterlife by living through life.
I used to have a friend that believed in the whole Dante's Inferno concept of hell, where people are tortured forever and ever. And I asked him, I said, well, the Bible says you'll be thrown into an outer darkness where you will not be present before the Lord. It's as if he never knew you. So how would that work with an omnipresent God never knowing you? I said, the only way that can logically work is if you don't exist. You see what I mean? That's the only way an omnipresent God can't observe you anymore.
I've heard the same thing, that they tried to say that, and that goes back to the void before the Big Bang, I would say. No one knows what was there. It's literally the outer darkness. And forgot to mention, Zagan also represents Cthulhianism as much as I do at the same time. A lot of us are into Cthulhianism. And it's when we get into that we start getting into Azazoth, the dreaming god, the blind idiot god, as well as Yog-Sothoth and other deities who address that void, that unmentionable place, that thing that is cosmic beyond understanding.
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, that this present makes the most sense to me. It's just, how do I put it? Again, that's why it's kind of a little bit out there, because you're talking about cosmic, you're talking about things beyond our perception, and pushing ourselves to go beyond what we or faculties, beyond perception, and that everything, when it comes down to it, is an illusion. And so when we talk about, like what you're saying, the afterlife, and not God not seeing us, and that, I mean, there's just more beyond the beyond. I mean, we can encapsulate in our minds what God or Satan might be, but like the actual feeling, like there's our perception of it, which is based on what we read, what we study, what schools we attend, what groups we're a part of. But then there's that experience, and that's where theism exists, and that's where theism thrives. That's what atheists don't experience, and it's like that interconnection with something beyond myself. And that's where trying to put it to words, you're only going to fail. Anybody that tries to put it in words, they're going to fail what it is. I mean, and that's why I think H.P. Lovecraft had it the best way, where it's like, this is a beyond where you can't really explain it. And that is something that we all have to experience individually.
Yeah, it's definitely well beyond understanding of our simple human logic. That's why we anthropomorphize so many deities and whatnot. They're beyond our logical understanding. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up really quickly and whatnot, so people can actually see this. This is actually part of the Jansang files, and what we are looking at here is the Quo Vadis article from, as you can see, 1974, Cloven Hoof. Now, for those in the audience who don't know what this article is, this was an article that crossed Anton LaVey's desk, and it was written by Michael Aquino. Now, at this point in time, Anton LaVey had taken back over the Cloven Hoof. This has been confirmed to me directly by high-ranking members, at least 3 to 4 high-ranking members of the Church of Satan. A couple of them were there at the time, supposedly, or at least around at the same time, so they kind of sort of peripherally saw this going on. And this article came across his desk the year before. Zagan, could you please mute your mic? Thank you. The year before Anton LaVey and Michael Aquino parted ways. And so Anton LaVey put his stamp of approval for this article to be published in the Cloven Hoof. It's a very big, important article that says, because he put his stamp of approval on this to Michael Aquino, that said, in this article, Michael Aquino makes it no bones about it. Yes, God, Satan is real. Anton LaVey, if he was an atheist, he would have never authorized this article. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to sort of dive into it really quickly. And it's a really important article because anybody who knows Michael Aquino knows on how avid and ravenous of a theistic Satanist he was. And it was a later point of contention that, Michael Aquino, he was the first one of us to set out to prove Anton LaVey wasn't an atheist, and he was doing it before anybody else. And the reason was later on after the schism, there was the rumors that Anton LaVey was an atheist, and he had certainly started drifting a little bit more towards the atheistic appearance, but he had never called himself an atheist. And that's where something like this comes into play. Really quickly, before we get into anything, is there anything that anybody else wants to add in?
Well, I was curious if so far with all the evidence we've already provided, has it actually gotten through to any of the Church of Satan or some of the people that have been attacking you?
Well, it definitely seems that the attacks are easing off. I'm going to say that right now. I can almost guarantee you it's starting to get through to the Church of Satan that we're coming back. We have a lot of evidence. It's very difficult to combat with us, especially in my last video when I told Church of Satan to go fuck off. And if you want to bleep me out on your channel, Brett, you can, but I'm not monetized, so
you say whatever you want. You say whatever you want.
I told Church of Satan to fuck off, and that was because, they had become so hostile and whatnot, so unable to see past anything. They tried to Satan-splain away things like this, things like the Joe Pine show, trying to make it sound like, Anton LaVey was just joking around and everything. And, when we look at the Barton letter, which we will look at that here in very shortly, we can actually see that she called out everything that they're doing, and it's really fucking weird because she wrote that letter in 1998, in January 1998, just a few months after Anton LaVey died, and here we are, 2024, and they are still performing the same shit on other people to browbeat them into submission. So this article becomes a very significant point for anybody who is trying to show the truth, because it was written the year before, published the year before Anton LaVey and Michael Aquino split. The big rumor at this time was that Michael Aquino and Anton LaVey split over a disagreement of theism versus atheism. No, that wasn't it at all. Anton LaVey at that time started performing some pretty shady shit. And yes, I'm going to flat out call Anton out on this. He started doing some pretty shady shit. He was selling priesthoods for a monetary sum. Aquino had a problem with that. A lot of Church of Satan members who had busted their ass to get ordained properly, just like these three men that you see here, Brett, they busted their ass to each get ordained properly. To hear that Anton was selling for a monetary sum the clergyship, a priesthood, it's sort of a slap in the face. And Aquino took a very steep grievance to it, and so did many other members of the Church of Satan at that time. And they broke away from the Church of Satan to form the Temple of Set. And that was the true story of the schism. It had nothing to do with atheism versus theism. That whole myth came around later on. Go ahead, Frank.
So I don't know how it could have even possibly done that, because it even states in Black Magic that was written by Michael Aquino, and that was, I do believe, a few years even before LaVey had passed away. He tells you right there in the book that's why they left. It's right there. Like, this letter could have never even came into existence, and the proof is still there why what happened happened. And it was published by him, written by him. So if we know that information is out there, that Michael Aquino has many writings about the Church of Satan and Satanism in general, I don't understand why you would ignore that. Why it would take some letter, or you would need to hear it from Michael Aquino's mouth. He wrote it, and he wrote it years ago, and it wasn't right before he died. It was, or by someone else. It was written by him.
May I ask a question? You're saying that he basically gave out higher ranks to people that had not been there for as long. Would I be wrong in stating that this was mostly done for celebrities or popular, famous people with money?
Yes.
Yeah, there was
including Marilyn Manson.
There was definitely a few famous people who got honorary priesthoods, but at that point in time, LaVey was very careful to use the term honorary priesthood instead of, yeah, you're an actual priest. One of the biggest, most famous people to receive an honorary priesthood was Sammy Davis Jr. And you'll see pictures of Sammy Davis Jr. with Anton LaVey and Michael Aquino and whatnot. Aquino and LaVey were both very big fans of Sammy Davis. And, they all got along very well. Sammy Davis Jr., from what I understand, also kind of did the same thing in reverse to them and made them unofficial members of the Rat Pack. So there was that. But yes, originally it was just honorary priesthoods to people. Chris, go ahead.
I was thinking about what Kane had said about the how they could have this letter and then still not pay attention to it and still say what they said. And I'm sitting here thinking back about our earlier conversations about abortion and how they were still trying to say that by the time he died, Anton LaVey was anti-abortion, that he had never said that it was anti-satanic, that he changed his mind by the time he died. But you go to like the book Satan Speaks, which was released post-death, and in his chapter entitled Third Side Perspectives, it actually says that satanically speaking, he cannot support abortion. So the fact that the work is out there, that the words are out there, I just don't think they care. They're just trying to sell their bullshit.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so guys, we've been procrastinating this long enough. Let's go ahead and dive into this article really quickly. And well, actually, before we get into this one, let's go ahead and cover this one really quickly. Now, for those of you who have not watched my video talking about this article, you can go over to my YouTube channel and you can see the full video where I read a very specific part of this letter, and I go into explaining it quite well. And so we're gonna do the same thing here, where I'm not gonna stop and just give critique. I'm just gonna quickly do a quick read through of the third paragraph, because that is the most important paragraph of this letter. So it's that big long paragraph near the end. I'm just going to do a quick read through of that, and so everybody can see it, and then we will discuss this letter very much so. Actually, and we'll go back and we will talk about the second paragraph here too, but I want to cover the third paragraph first because that is the most important. So here we go. As for saying Dr. LeVay believed in the devil, I think that it's fairly obvious from his philosophy, from his books he's written, the interviews he's given, and the organization he founded, how he defines Satan, and how he uses the concept of the metaphor of the devil is also fairly obvious. But I would be lying if, when asked the direct question, quote, did Dr. LeVay believe in the devil, end quote, I were to answer, quote, no, he didn't, end quote. I think I've elaborated on this idea in my books and in the articles I've written. I lost my place. In the articles I've written. But apparently, Mr. Wolf hasn't bothered to read them. He considers himself qualified to make judgments on whether I am fascistic, satanic, and or stupid based on my appearance rather than my writings. He apparently objected to my answering such a question with a forthright yes when I was faced with the national television cameras and speaking to an audience of American dunderheads. And I won't cop out by saying I was grieving. I was. But I also was thinking of the people who were grieving the loss of our leader all around the world, and how it would sound to them if the first thing they heard after he's dead, they hear someone close to him say essentially, oh, he never really believed all that crap. He never really believed in the devil. He was just fooling. If I was a Satanist out there weeping and despondent, I would rather hear a voice clearly say, you're damn right he believed in the devil, you assholes. Whether you want to take the watts to understand it or not. That's really the way he felt about the whole issue. He'd written books, but it wasn't up to him to defend himself or explain away people's fears beyond that. If they didn't get it, that was their problem. As he said, these were his ideas, how he lived his life, and if no one else in the world agreed with him, he'd still be living his life and thinking the same thoughts, whether people understood or not. That was powerful, and I don't think it should ever be undermined by trying to rewrite or apologize for it. It was him, and it's an attitude many share. I want people to pay attention to a few specific words that she utilized in that, and it was especially in the final lines, but also where she was talking about how she had been accused of being fascistic, whether she was satanic or not, and that she was being judged by her appearance. Anybody who's seen pictures of Blanche during this time frame would know she was a heavier set woman at this time. She was a full-figured woman. And just like her, I've been hounded because I'm a little bit heavier set in my middle age. She was called stupid. She was called ignorant, probably illiterate. I've received same jabs and jibes. People have seen them. And she was called a Nazi. She was called a fascist, a Nazi. Geez, what does that sound like, people? Doesn't that sound all like attacking arguments of the political left?
It does. It
Yeah.
does.
I mean, that's all we saw last year.
How many people here have received those same attacks?
I have not actually. I have not received anything like that from anyone, which I'm very surprised about, but I have not.
Brett?
Well, I'll tell you what, in social media, I've always told my friends the more popular or relevant you get, it doesn't get better for you, it gets worse. And as far as insults go, I think that I could probably write a couple trilogies based upon the words that have been used for me.
Yeah, I think we can all agree with that. I mean, anybody who's on the political right has received similar attacks, in my opinion. The other thing that I want people to pay attention to, and this is the more important part, we've established that they use the same attacks on her that they use nowadays. But in the last two lines, she says, I don't think it should ever be undermined by trying to rewrite or apologize for it. That was a very interesting statement that she made right there, because at this point in time, no one was of the mind publicly that to try to rewrite anything. Yet here she is talking about rewriting and undermining his philosophy to, change it and to apologize for it, whatnot. I'll turn it over to you guys. What do you guys have to think about that? What are your guys' opinions?
I don't think that they rewrote really anything solidly on paper, like we discussed. The books put out, but I think their essays and a lot of the stuff that they're putting out on Facebook and everything like that to their members from their upper clergy is reshaping the way they all think. And despite the fact that they write a lot of right-wing stuff, they're all left-wing mindseted, and they've all become a bunch of apologetics.
Yeah, they use all their platforms too, like Instagram and like you called, which was funny because I was about to send it to you, but I guess it popped up on your stuff too, where it's just they misquote parts of Satan Speaks, and just to fit their agenda, they're a little, but they don't quote the whole thing that describes a little bit more as to what he's talking about.
Yeah, they did something like that just recently on Facebook, and it came out of Satan Me.
Yeah.
That a quote was made of Anton LaVey from Blanche Barton's book, The Secret Life of a Satanist.
Yeah,
and it was just a tiny little quote. And if you just looked at that small, tiny little quote isolated, it would sound completely atheistic. But I went ahead behind them and I put the whole paragraph discussing it. And it just completely blew that out of the water. It put a completely different spin on it. And yeah, they definitely did not like that.
One of your friends mentioned earlier in the conversation about Anton's views on abortion. And while we were talking and I was definitely listening, I looked up and I found some letters. Now, I would need you to validate them and tell me if they're official. But if this is true, what his views were about children and abortion, then he and I agree. I was absolutely shocked.
He was very anti-abortion. There's two actual articles. There was one that he wrote in Letters from the Devil, where he was responding to a person. And actually, I'm not going to pull it up on my computer, but I can at least go ahead and find it really quickly.
I did post you a link in private chat that takes it directly to these specific topics if you're interested.
All right, so I'm opening up the link. Anton LaVey on Satanism and abortion. Could somebody go ahead and mute her, please?
I know that in Satan Speaks, he says that a child or an unborn child should not have to suffer the repercussions for their irresponsible parents' decision. And if the mother is not responsible enough to make a responsible decision for her unborn child, that the father should be given the ability to make the decision. And if he's not able to make the decision for that, responsible decision for that unborn child, that he should be pretty much chemically castrated or made so that he cannot reproduce anyhow. So strong were his views about that.
See, that's pretty interesting. Nowadays, you notice that a lot of people say that the man should not have an opinion or view in the matter, even though he participated. And I find that to be absolutely atrocious.
Yeah. This is actually a pretty good thing. And yeah, it was definitely this is the letters from the devil one, I believe, because it says letters from the devil, which let's go ahead and let me go ahead and read this. So for people who don't know what Letters from the Devil was, it was a weekly periodical where people could write Anton LaVey and he would respond to them in the newspaper and he would talk about different subjects. Sometimes we post a Letters to the Devil in the Cloven Hoof. This new Cloven Hoof issue does not have it because we didn't get any letters this time. But so somebody wrote in to Anton LaVey and he responded to them. And this was March 21st, 1971, that he said this. And this article was literally what he said was, the staggering number of illegal abortions would diminish overnight if the antiquated approach to birth control were replaced with a strict government-controlled program, which made it mandatory for each person to adopt a method of contraceptive that would preclude the possibility of births due to quote-unquote forgetfulness, ignorance, or irresponsibility. Abortion is unnatural and unnecessary. Man is the only animal who practices such wanton killing of its young, and yet man considers himself emancipated and more highly evolved than any other species. Legalized abortion would have a disastrously demoralizing effect on our society, for it would further instill the notion that human life is one of the cheapest commodities in the world. To anyone who would presume to, quote, play God, unquote, nonchalantly turning thumbs down on any tiny person whose only crime is existing as nature dictated he must, I say, either accept the blame and bear your cross, or else reject the barbaric religion which has distorted your reason and robbed you of the right to choose. How can these murderous deeds be rationalized? Does it not occur to the proponents of legalized abortion that their actions may result in the destruction of embryos which could mature into mighty leaders or great teachers? How can we even consider the senseless annihilation of our unborn when it is due to the stupidity and neglect of their parents that they were created? I would defy all logic to execute a child for a murder committed by one of his parents. But to me, it seems equally illogical to punish any unborn child for the action of his parents. Society must reject any religious creed if it requires that its adherents produce unwanted human life, only to have it destroyed. Anton LaVey, Letters from the Devil, March 21st, 1971. Thank you for that, Brett.
It's pretty powerful stuff, my man.
It really is. And I would like to give me a quick second, guys. Go ahead and speak amongst yourselves. I'm going to find this article in the Satanic Testament, which I did reproduce, and I will read out what was written, the portion that was written for the Third Side argument, which was published in 1998, a year after Anton LaVey died. So let me go for that. You guys go ahead and speak amongst yourselves.
I'll probably end up having to, once I get to feeling better and I'm not sweating like a piglet over here from the sickness, I'll probably end up making a video about that. That's pretty powerful material there.
I have a question, Brett. I mean, after reading some of this material by Anton LaVey, I mean, it sounds like some of the stuff is kind of resonating with your own personal viewpoints. I mean, what other viewpoints besides the abortion issue kind of resonates with you?
Well, I don't know if you had a chance to see my my video where I played him through where he's talking to a host. I thought the host was quite disrespectful. I repeatedly paused to remember going off on how the guy was behaving towards him. In the interview, he actually physically assaults Mr. LaVey. Did you guys see that part of it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, just I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, he like bopped him on the head with the clipboard. I found the part, by the way, guys. Yeah, he whacked him on the head, and LeVay took it. He didn't respond. He didn't do anything about it. But yeah, if that was modern day times, I'm pretty sure LeVay would have sued the living shit out of him.
I think it's possible I might have just slapped the guy in the mouth or pulled a Joker scene. I don't know. Jeez.
Yeah. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to read this part. It looks like Chris had to use facilities. So,
may I answer this guy just real quickly? The guy who said that some of this resonates with me. Actually, so far, everything I've looked into and all the interviews I've seen, there's nothing that the guy has said that I disagree with. I haven't heard his full views on the concept of God, but what he said about Christianity and what he said about us trying to live our lives to the fullest, do right by people, how can I say that's wrong if that's how I feel about things, right? So that
Right.
does
exactly.
resonate.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was just interested because, like, there are some, I guess, when it comes to how we identify as like what's sensible among people, and birder, I think across all culture can be seen as, it's kind of frowned upon, and then in that subcontext we see abortion, and it's like that should also be a universal thing. Like that's not really okay, but here we are going back and forth for almost 100 years about it in this country. So it's just kind of, it just kind of made me curious as to what you thought, what else kind of resonated from a Christian perspective when you actually look at what he is saying and you actually see, well, you know what? Some of his criticism about the church is kind of spot on, some of the criticism about how people interact and how we have psychic vampires, kind of be aware of like people that try to use you or take advantage of you. I mean, those sort of things I think are pretty universal, at least here in America.
I guess the last thing I can say, and then I definitely want to hear what our friend has to say about this, but I think that one of the problems that Christians and Satanists might find themselves in is they can't get past the labels. They can't get past this idea or this pigeonhole that they put each other in. If you can get past that and look into the heart of the person and try to understand them, you'll find common ground every time. And that's what I try to do.
And that's something that I'm going to want to address with you, Brett, after we get off this subject and whatnot. I definitely want to talk about that because I watched TTOR's video talking about how he interviewed his little discussion with me, and I like him as a person, but he made some serious mistakes that a lot of Christians tend to make. But we will discuss that after this. Before I read this really quickly, I want to express my perspective on the abortion issue. This is my personal perspective and how it should be approached, is that I personally do not feel abortions for just general purposes should be legal. at all. I feel that they should be blackballed if a person went out of their way to not use birth control, to not be proactive. They should not have that right to end a life needlessly. But if they've taken that proactive stance and whatnot, there shouldn't even be the question that an abortion is even necessary. And in the instance where birth control at that point fails, they should not be punished by it, but yet they should not end the life prematurely. Certainly adoption is an option. I know I was adopted out when I was an infant, and fortunately I've gotten to know my birth mother and my birth family, and we all love each other and we're very close to each other. But for those people who want to go out and deliberately not use birth control and have sex and do all these things, and then they wonder why they ended up getting pregnant, they go out and they get an abortion, I think that's an absolute atrocity. Certainly I agree with Anton LaVey in his perspective that birth control should be mandatory. We should be mandatorily put on birth control, both men and women, to some degree, wherever possible. And certainly, in order to become a parent, and I'm speaking as a parent myself, I feel that being a parent you need to have a license to take care of a child. We have to have licenses to own guns. We have to have licenses to drive cars. We don't need to have licenses to raise another human being. I mean, come on. Even when we go to adopt, we have to undergo these procedures to make sure we're fit parents. I believe that there should be procedures to make sure that the parent goes through parenting classes, to make sure they're not psychotic. They need to go through therapy. They need to be analyzed by therapists to make sure they're of the mindset to be parents and be stable parents and be good parents. That is my opinion there. However, I am of the opinion that there are times when there is an unfortunate need for abortion, for medical necessity, when the mother's life is in danger from an ectopic pregnancy, when it is blatant that one or both of them is going to die if this is carried to term. I believe that at that point, abortion should be put on the table as a possibility. Certainly, Diana, my girlie, went through a very similar situation with our son, Robert. Now, fortunately, both of them are fine. They were able to take my son 15 weeks early in order to end the pregnancy, but if it had been allowed to continue, she would have died. And that is a situation that it is a very tough situation that we had to face, and I had to ask myself some very serious questions there. And fortunately, we didn't have to make that choice, but I literally had to look at the doctors, because the doctor asked me, if we could only save one of them, which one do you want us to save? And I told the doctor flat out, save the mother. We will mourn the child. And that's a very sad thing to say. Now, some of these kids, they're born with extreme deformities where they will never live a full, prosperous life, where they will, to some degree or another, suffer through life. They will always need to be medically cared for by other people, and some of them to a very extreme degree. I know there's one young girl that was in Mexico who she was only born with a brain stem, just enough of a brain to function her body. There's not enough brain to even be there functionally in the mind. She has no conscious idea of where she's at and what's going on. She just does everything on autopilot, and her head's shaped like a bowl. There's nothing literally inside her skull, nothing between her ears. Why should we force this mother to suffer in taking care of this, for the most part, vegetable? The child should have been, in this instant, released from its suffering and allowed to pass on. The mother should have been allowed to mourn the loss of the child. It's very sad. It is very tragic, and it should be treated as a tragedy. Abortion is never a kind thing, and it should always be treated as tragedy. And that is my opinion on it. If there is a medical reason, a very valid medical reason for it, then we should have that on the table. But if there is not, then absolutely no. There should be no reason for abortion whatsoever. And that is my opinions. Now that I've lectured everybody on that.
No, it sounded like an important point, and I agree with you. Only on serious certain conditions will I consider it acceptable. But I know that people who do go through those experiences, they don't do it out of malice or spite. If they could save both, they would.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, certainly. And I've known plenty of people who have had children with such extreme deformities that the child suffers and whatnot, and the parents are virtually grieving because they hate seeing their child suffering, and they didn't get the abortion they wish that they had in order to spare the child, and they regret their choice of forcing the child to live. And I've known at least 2 people who have gone to prison because they put their children out of their misery. And certainly we don't let our pets go through suffering when they become injured, or if they're born with extreme deformities, we don't allow them to live. We put them down, and yet we get punished when we do the same thing for a human. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. But if there is no reason for it, then absolutely that should not be permitted.
We have to be careful too with medical doctors and hospitals and all that with some of their claims. Whenever I brought a daughter into the world, they said she wasn't going to make it. They said that even if somehow she managed to, she wouldn't be able to walk, talk. She wouldn't be coherent. Well, now she's 20 years old. She works. She is smarter than her daddy and mommy put together, and she's a bear. So don't always try to get a second opinion before making the ultimate or absolute decision, folks.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and get on to this article. It's really interesting that we got into the whole abortion topic. I was planning this for a different video down the line, but it's still a good topic to be on. So we're going to go into this now. This was written sometime before Anton LaVey's death in 1997, but it was published a year after Anton LaVey's death in Satan Speaks. So people want to go read that. They can find it in Satan Speaks. It is in the Third Side. Chris, what's the name of the article again?
Third Side Perspectives.
Third Side Perspectives. So you can go to and buy the book Satan Speaks and find it there.
Somebody's got a basic system.
Yeah, Chris, can you turn off your mic, please? Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead. This is somewhere like down halfway through the article. So it goes, for example, the science of eugenics provides solutions for the issue of abortion. Satanically speaking, I am against abortion. Yet I do consider a problem of overpopulation. Therefore, I advocate for compulsory birth control. Unborn babies did not ask to be conceived. Once conceived, they should have loving, responsible parents, even if adoptive. A stupid, irresponsible woman should not have the right to decide what she does with her own body, when in all other things her mind is being controlled by impersonal vested interest. An unborn child's father should influence the outcome of a pregnancy if it can be determined that he is the more responsible than the mother. If he is stupid, insensitive, and irresponsible, he should be sterilized. Irresponsible parents, male or female, should simply be kept from conceiving children. The most vocal anti-abortion crusaders are fundamentalist Christians. Their entire plan and purpose originated with the same motivation that propagates any ethnic or religious grouping: to fill the world with more people like themselves. The woman's movement favors abortion on the grounds that a woman's body is hers alone, to control as she chooses. Neither advocates mandatory birth control and selective sterilization, which is a third side, could eliminate most of the entire issue. Of course, whenever an issue becomes more important than a solution, don't expect to stumble over a third side. I respect someone who simply admits that he or she doesn't like kids or dogs, cats, monkeys, zebras, or potato bugs for reasons of their own. When they cloak their reasons in the cant populist causes that I become truculent. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to shamelessly plug my book here really quickly. You can find this book on Amazon. It is called The Satanic Testament, and it goes for about $30. If you want to read my views and opinions on Satanism and see quotes from Anton LaVey, Michael Aquino, and various other Satanists, this is the book for you.
You wouldn't happen to offer a Kindle, would you? I try to do that with my own books.
We're thinking about here sometime soon going and providing some digital copies, but for the most part, a lot of us have chosen to stay away from the digital copies. A lot of Satanists like to have that physical copy in our hands, and we certainly, because we do rituals and whatnot. Oh, excuse me. We keep the books right there where we can physically see them. We're not sitting there talking on our cell phones or anything. We like to have the physical material. If you want, I can provide you with a PDF copy of my book personally, but I would ask that you don't share it around.
Right. One of the reasons why I do the Kindle thing is obviously there's people out there that don't have good eyesight or trouble with hearing, and with a Kindle you can actually play an audio AI voice alongside it.
Yeah. But that was Anton LaVey's opinion right up to his death. So we clearly show an article from 1971 where he states his opinions, and then in 1998 his opinion didn't change one little bit. It was exactly the same from 71 to the time of his death. Didn't change it one little bit. And so that shows that, he was still the same man right there. And I think that is a very important thing to show for this next article that we're going to read, which...
I would probably, if you don't mind real quick, it's not just adoption isn't the only other alternative, folks. Women who have children, whether they have a man supporting them or not, they can get on programs that will actually help them, our low-income home, help them with food and all this kind of stuff. Now, I know in some places in America it's absolute garbage, but there are places where you can get assistance if you do decide to keep the child. Go ahead. Yeah,
you're exactly right. And women have an easier time of getting this assistance than men do. Absolutely. I've been a single father before, and it was a pain in the ass for me as a man to get on these assistance programs. But the moment a woman steps in, they're pretty much handed everything to them. And it's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of sad, but a woman is definitely clearly favored by the courts and by the system over a man. Now, a man is expected to be able to take care of himself without any sort of assistance. So we tend to get shat on when it comes to that sort of thing.
Absolutely agree. So what do we got here, sir?
All right. So what we're looking at here is the Quo Vadis article by Michael Aquino. As I explained earlier, this was published in the Cloven Hoof the year before the famous 1975 schism. So it was published in 1974. And at that point in time, Anton LaVey had taken back over the Cloven Hoof publication. He was the editor-in-chief. So this article would have had to come across his desk personally and get his personal stamp of approval on it to be published. And that is the key most important thing here, because what we will explore here in this article is that this article answers a question that was asked. Very direct, very straightforward. Aquino answers it with an emphatic, unarguable, yes, Satan exists. And so if Anton LaVey was an atheist, he would have never allowed this article to go past his desk. He would have definitely just, taken it from, his submissions folder and just dropped it into the waste bin next to him, as would have been the want of any atheist. But no, he put a stamp of approval on it, put it into the issue of the Cloven Hoof, and sent it out the door to be printed and published to all the Church of Satan members. That kind of is very loud speaking. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to read this article. I'm going to go ahead and nope, that doesn't work. I was hoping to blow up the article so I could see it a little bit better, but that's not going to work for me. So here we go. The Cloven Hoof, Volume 6.
There is a way for you to zoom it up if you really want to.
And how would that be?
There is a little button under the screen that looks like a pen. If you click that, you'll be able to edit your screen and drag it open more to make it bigger for you.
I don't see that. Oh, I see it. All right, so okay. Let's see here.
Then you got to hit save.
It's not working for me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can take it down, but I can't put it up. So we're just going to go with it as is. And I'm just going to kind of inch really close to the screen so I can read it. So it's from the Cloven Hoof, Volume 6, number 4M, July through August, year 9, Anno Satanas. Copyright 1974 CE by the Church of Satan. Quo Vadis by Michael Aquino. Among our mail, we find a significant number of comments, something like this. When I joined the Church of Satan, I thought that I was becoming a member of a religious organization dedicated to the worship of the devil. At least the Satanic Bible left me with this impression. But while the Cloven Hoof is all very interesting from a philosophical and materialistic standpoint, it seems to regard devil worship as little more than a convenient allegory. Is this a church? Does Satan really exist? If so, where and in what form? And why are the leaders of the Church of Satan so reluctant to discuss questions of literal demonology? Earlier in our live stream, Chris, you expressed exactly these questions when you joined the Church of Satan. Am I correct?
Yes, there's actually this article that I was referring to whenever I was saying that I felt the same way that they were expressing.
Yeah. So this is actually a really common way of many people are. When you read the Satanic Bible, when you read the Satanic Witch, especially the Complete Witch, which was its original version, and the Satanic Witch with Zena LaVey's introduction to it, and then when you read the Satanic Rituals, it is all very theistic sounding. It all leaves you with the strong impression of theism. So let's go ahead and continue. Before we respond to this, a brief preface is in order. During the days of the original Magic Circle in San Francisco, and for the first few years of the church itself, little effort was made to disguise the literal core of our doctrines. At that time, there was no Wiccans, pseudo-Satanists, journalistic occult authorities, or dime a dozen Dark Shadows films reducing the Prince of Darkness to soap opera status. There was only the Church of Satan. We are all familiar with what happened next. Rosemary's Baby, produced with the Church of Satan's guidance, touched off an international fad greater than goldfish swallowing, phone booth stuffing, hula hoops, and zoot suits altogether. Suddenly, everyone was into the occult, and if one was swashbuckling, one was a Satanist. If timid, a Wiccan. If fuddy-duddy, a theosophist or a Rosicrucian. If sexually obsessed, a sadomasochist. If altruistic, a Jesus freak. If chicken, a reporter or observer, but always an authority. Satan himself became a tennis ball. Prior to 1966, he was allegorical. Suddenly, it was de rigueur that he was very, very literal. Much more so than God. Do you remember the old-time cover, referring to Time magazine? Is God dead? Then someone made the profound discovery that Satan was a Hebrew term, and there were one or two religions on this planet besides Judaism and Christianity. Immediately, Satan was passé. The thing to do now was to revive the worship of the primeval fertility gods and goddesses that the Neanderthals grunted over. Finally, some enthusiasts actually managed to regress past the Neanderthal stage to Krishna consciousness, Scientology, and Guru Maharaj. I can't even pronounce that. Maharaj, whatever that is. Is it really any wonder then that the Church of Satan withdrew literal Satanism, quote unquote, from the public arena? In our pronouncements, publications, press releases, the devil became an allegory for materialism and the unchained human ego. Speaking in such terms, we could continue to gain the ear of people who really matter, the de facto Satanists of the world. Had we continued to champion a literal devil, media distortion would have lumped us together with nut elements, and our access to serious channels of communication would have been seriously impaired. I'm going to stop here really quickly, guys, to get people's opinion. We see the first hints of why that Satanists withdrew from the theistic arena publicly. But he's making it very clear here that this was only on the public side of things in order to preserve the real teachings internally. Guys, what's your opinions on this?
I think that they started off with an outward facade of the devil being not real. They was just philosophical, and they started bringing in the wrong crowd, and we just got too much of the wrong crowd, and it just flooded in. And there was no going back because we got Peter Gilmore that came in eventually that started flooding the gates even more.
Well, in a way, I can gladly say I'm glad that happened, because Aquino basically hijacked Satanism and protected it, and it lived on in the Temple of Set in an Egyptian standpoint. But unfortunately, they were so protective of it because how it was abused that they made it really difficult for people to get in. And even to this day, I think they're up to like 300 members, and they keep it small on purpose. And all the things that you have to do to jump levels and prove to them that you're worthy of learning that knowledge, you have a small time period where you have to read a ton of books, take a ton of exams, and if you do not do it within a year, they throw you out and you have to reapply again and pay that fee again. And they just went really, really extra with it. But that's basically what happened. It was taken because he knew that when LeVay started making it more about money, that's what it was going to turn into, and it would fall into the wrong hands. And I just had a situation with this with an ex of mine who wanted information about something, and I told him that he's not ready for that information. You don't have the mindset for it, and when you play with that stuff and you don't understand it, it will bite back. And that's kind of what Aquino did, is he just rescued it and whisked it off.
I myself, I was a young adult when this happened. You guys probably know what I'm talking about, but surely you've heard of the satanic panic. You heard of this? I believe
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I believe that it was started, one of its innovators for it happening was because of a Christian group that was running a daycare called the McMartins. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Yes,
this
I
was
do.
an event that Michael Aquino was directly involved in. They accused him of coming in and performing satanic rituals in a secret room, sexually abusing the kids and everything else. And it took Michael Aquino almost, I want to say, 7 years to exonerate himself fully.
Yeah, the Christians as well as the Satanists took a beating during this time because over 300 children came forward and said that they were made to dance in pentagrams, drink horse blood, just the most crazy stuff kids are able to come up with whenever they're in a courtroom. And it also changed our very essence of how our system works. So a lot of major dealings because of that. I think the Satanists as well as the Christians got burned bad for that, and not for good reason.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
like the
there
Salem
definitely
witch
was.
trials all over again.
Yeah, it definitely was. Chris, you wanted to say something?
Oh no, I was listening to a choking child in the other room. I was trying to make sure they were okay.
Oh, damn. Yeah. As quite clear there, we are parents and we're very responsible and whatnot. I can vouch for that. Chris is a very responsible parent and whatnot. And he has to be very responsible for more than just the children or the underage kids. He has a entire facility of adolescent adults that he needs to take care of too. He's told me a few very interesting stories. Chris, if you want to go and tell people what you do for a living, go ahead. If not, that's fine.
I'd probably be best not putting that out there right now.
Yeah. Want to go ahead and turn down your mic?
You got somebody out here called Jason Young who says false accusations made against Satanists, the court should compensate. You know what? I agree with that. I think that the Christians as well as Satanists who were dragged through the mud over that when they had nothing to do with it, and it was proven without a doubt neither group did anything to those kids, I think they should be sued. Yeah.
We also got someone named Charles Taylor who makes a very strong, rock solid point. He says, in Genesis, the devil is the desire for knowledge as it comes with responsibility. You are very correct, Charles. One of our tenets and laws is literally titled responsibility to the responsible. And we as Satanists are, commanded to take responsibility for ourselves, for our actions and our own inactions. And Satan certainly demands us, instead of kneeling and growling before him, to study and learn and, to improve our knowledge. That is very much so a very correct statement you've made. Thank you for that.
I got something to tack on to that if I can really quick, Luke.
Go ahead.
So, unlike in Christianity, God is willing to just give you whatever. Well, the fact of the matter is that's not really how it works. It has to be earned either way. When Lucifer gave us the black flame, if you do not feed that black flame and you do not grow with it, it will go out, and then you will lose all of what you gained through working with Satan and in that current. It's very important that you keep that flame lit.
And do you mind telling me a little bit more of what you mean by black flame? I'm still learning and educating myself
Sure.
in the theology.
So the
Go
black
ahead.
flame is the equivalent of the Holy Spirit in a way. It is that unseen force that lives within inside us that Lucifer granted the entire world.
It is literally the power of magic, the flame of creativity,
Yes.
of the desire to grow, to improve, to reach one's ultimate goal, and to create works of art, music, literature, to study. It is literally the black flame of life.
To indulge in life.
Yeah, in our philosophy, literally the first person to get the black flame was Cain, at which he created the oasis of Enoch. You know, when he was venturing. I see Chris wants to say something.
I was just agreeing with y'all about the black frame being that spark that helps us to bring out what's within.
So right there, I mean, some of these things that you guys have pointed out, these are clearly theistic, supernatural. So still, I wonder to myself how someone can play mental gymnastics and say it's atheistic. You see what I mean? I mean,
Yeah, it's absolutely ludicrous. If we can, let's go ahead and continue with this article, because I think it's a very important article for us to get through so we can see what it says and we can talk more about it. But yes, you are very much so correct, Brett, and that it is a very theistic religion. It's not the evil religion that many Christians talk about and try to portray us as. Certainly, we do enjoy playing the bad guy in a movie or in a story. The bad guys always get the best lines, but that's in fiction. In real life, you know, we're actually pretty decent people. So I'm going to go ahead and continue here, unless anybody wants to add any final words before I go ahead.
I'm all ears.
All right. Now we reach the end of the boom. The Exorcist was the last gasp. A few of the occult flower children still remain, but they have become relics, throwbacks within their own subculture. No one listens to them. They have nothing new to say. One by one, rats deserting a sinking ship. They quietly lay aside their capes, swords, and amulets. It's all over. Time to find a new toy. Certainly that seems to be very much so. Like many atheists who jump in, they try to take up a cause, and then when they realize that cause no longer serves them, they throw it to the side like a broken toy and move on to the next one. And so it is that Satan awakes to his disciples who, after long years of frustration, are minded to leave Rome. He appears echoing God's admonishment to St. Peter. Whither goest thou? Having seen so much, having partaken of my knowledge, having known me for what I truly am, abuse not my trust and confidence. Return to Rome, and together we shall begin the building of our new empire. Indeed, Satan exists, not as just a myth, nor as a mere psychological archetype, nor as only a colorful figure of speech, but as an essential intelligent entity. Right here we hear Michael Aquino flat out stating in no uncertain terms that Satan is very much so real. You knew this, Winston. Don't deceive yourself. You did know it. You have always known it. The tongue in which his name is voiced is unimportant. But just as the shapes and substances of his manifestations are unimportant. This is actually very much so in line with our thinking, where Satan wears many mantles, many disguises. He can shape change and do many things. He's transmutable. God is an automatic non-consciousness, dispassionate cosmos in which man, yearning to be rid of the burden of his identity, seeks to immerse himself. That sounds very much so like Azazoth. I just wanted to point that out. The very language is Lovecraftian right there. Satan is that which has infused man with that identity, thus endowing him with the key to turn the inertia of the cosmos to his amusement, to make a man a god. Would it surprise you to discover that the true Prince of Darkness is not the devil of the Judaic Christian legend? That figure is a simple caricature. Rather, Satan is the true intelligence manipulating the quote-unquote God of the Bible and other divine personages, weaning man from subservience to all gods by making their demands increasingly intolerable. This is the truth behind all religious institutions. Throughout history, gradual deification of man, despite his most determined efforts to regress to the status of a non-thinking beast, while bowing before the cross, man has actually been succumbing to the diabolical double cross of such ingenuity and complexity that it staggers the comprehension. Call it, if you like, the greatest practical joke ever pulled. Or to put it in another way, humanity has been had. We only got a couple more paragraphs, so I'm going to go ahead and finish before we, we only got one paragraph left, so I'm going to go ahead and finish it before we discuss what was said. Does it suddenly ring true to you, Satanist? Do you begin to see what it's really all about? Do the peculiarities of human evolution now fall into place? Yet, if your mental block remains fixed, it is appropriate. The shock of awakening may drive unprepared individuals quite mad. This awakening is the actual abyss whose existence is dimly sensed by traditional occultists. Yet they have always failed to perceive the true function, to have failed miserably in their effort to challenge it. For those who cross the abyss, there is no return. And that is the Quo Vadis article, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and discuss this article and whatnot. And I think, let's go ahead and discuss it. Guys, open mic.
That article to me is always so interesting to reread and go over it, because just the points where Satan is real, explain that he is literal, explain that we have this, and even going further and explain that Satan in reality is way more than just comprehension of the Hebrew conception or the Christian conception of what Satan is. It's beyond that. And I always enjoy Aquino's writings, but especially that one.
Yeah, it definitely is. And especially when he starts talking about God being impersonal and whatnot. To me, that to anybody who's familiar with Lovecraftian Satanism, with what we call Cthulhianism now, or as Lovecraft himself would call Yog Sothothery, you can definitely draw the parallel between Aquino's description right there to God to that of Azazoth, the blind idiot god.
Sure, and I mean that's a topic for a different video, I'm sure, but kind of similar where try to take away the link between Catholicism and Satan is kind of doing the same thing that Church of Satan did with taking Satan completely out and bringing this atheistic perspective that they made up out of nowhere.
May I ask you something?
Sure.
Would love to hear all you guys' thoughts on that if you could. But you guys were mentioning the Black Flame and also figures that had actually experienced the devil in the Bible. Do you believe that the figures who actually had conversations with the devil in the Bible were also real?
Well, that's a very interesting topic. Yes, we know that Jesus had in the Bible direct dealings with the devil, and we also know that Jesus was an actual man named Yeshua. And recent documentation from Roman sources as well as other sources have indicated that before he was known as a prophet, before he was a rabbi, and he was certainly called a rabbi in the Bible by, I believe, Michael and Luke and whatnot. They all refer to him as rabbi, his apostles. We found recent documentation that he was a Roman slave soldier for a time, that he bought his freedom. He worked for it and he bought his freedom, and then he became a religious leader. We know he was a real person. We found the documentation validating he was a real person. We know the apostles were real people. But do we know that Abraham or Isaiah or Cain or any of these other people were real people? I don't know if there's any fully fledged confirmable documentation that would validate them. Certainly we find certain stories in different cultures that could hint that they were real people. When we look at the story of Cain, we see after the murder of Abel, he was condemned by God. He was marked by God. And a lot of people wonder what the mark of Cain is. And what that was is we see that he was given a likeness that would identify him from a great distance away to never be touched. Because when we read the story of Cain, we see that he was fearful and he asked God for protection, that how would people know me and know not to touch my flesh? They were going to beat me up. They were going to kill me. They were going to do all this other horrible stuff to me. And so God put a mark on him that we now call the mark of Cain, that was intended to identify him to everybody else as being different, that he was not to be harmed. And this is a mark that it had to be able to be identified at all times. And it was not just some sigil or runic mark. It wasn't writing on his forehead or anything. It was a changing of his actual appearance. And what we see is we look at the culture that in that part of the world that was going on where Cain would have lived, and they are all very swarthy people, dark-skinned people. And we know that he has to be given a mark that changes his appearance. And so he's given the likeness of the devil. He's given the likeness of Satan, of Lucifer, who even in the earliest descriptions of him he is described as being blonde. He's fair-skinned. He is beautiful, and he's often described as having blue eyes, blonde, fair skin, all this other stuff. And so we see that he's described, even in the oldest of the biblical literature, as being very much so in the way that the Nazis would have described Aryans. And so this was the mark of Cain. It was literally to change his racial ethnicity, where he was identifiable from a great distance away as being something completely different. And so what we see here in the stories of Cain, as he wandered through the deserts and whatnot, and he found the oasis of Enoch, he built the city of Enoch. This was, in our satanic literature, this was all gifts of the black flame that Satan came to him, and he was given these gifts, these powers of creativity to create wonderful things. And then after he created the city of Enoch, we see in these stories, he vanished. He left it to his son, his firstborn son, who's named Enoch. He named the city after him. And he ventured back out into the wastes. So that's supposedly the end of his stories. Now we know from these stories that he ventured north. We don't know where he went or why he ventured north, but we know that he ventured north. At some time later, we find in Nordic culture the story of the first man who came into the Viking kingdoms. And he was a man who was said to have come from the southern kingdoms and had ventured north from a very great distance away. And he was the one who began naming the rocks, the dells, the animals. He was the first Viking man. And he bedded with frost giants and whatnot. And he spawned the race of the Norse people. This story lines up in the timing of its initial tellings right around the time when Cain would have been leaving the city of Enoch, would have been leaving the southern kingdoms and venturing north. So was this man Cain? We believe it was, but there is no rock solid proof that it was Cain. It is only a supposition from two unique stories that seem to have originated in some way, shape, or form around the same time frame and would have lined up with each other.
My goodness, that was an intellectually in-depth point you put forth. I appreciate it. I have an unusual question for you. It's obvious you guys know the Bible very well, and I'd like to ask, do you believe...
What we don't know, we're happy to look up.
Do you believe that there was ever a time in the Bible, and I'm not talking about the perception of men who were against the devil or spoke out against the devil, but do you believe that there was any scene in the Bible where the devil was talking where he's misrepresenting himself?
No. And if you actually look in the Bible, Satan never presents himself in a malicious manner. I see everybody else is like thinking, they're trying to rack their brains if there was anything along that.
Yeah, I mean, just trying to run all those books through your head at once. But I'm thinking even in the book of Job, I mean, he went and talked to God before he started doing all this stuff. So
yeah, he got permission to do it. He wasn't being malicious towards Job at all. He was indifferent towards Job,
right,
and whatnot. He literally, he wasn't doing all that stuff to Job to punish Job for anything. He was challenging God, and he won. He actually beat God the second time around, and that's what a lot of people miss is in the story of Job. Is the statement, and I tell people, Christians, everybody, go pull out your Bible. You can look it up online and look at the second encounter between Satan and God, where the only thing Satan challenges God on is that Job will curse his name even for but a moment. He doesn't say that Job can't repent. He doesn't say that Job can't go back to God. It's just that if God takes away all the blessings that he gave Job, And if Job gets hurt enough, that Job will turn on God for a single instance and curse his name. And in the story, Job does exactly that. Satan proves his point. Job is just a man, and that if pushed far enough, any person, even the most devout person of that faith, could for a moment question their faith and curse God or curse their chosen deity. And that was the entire point of the story. That was the entire point of the bet. In that story, you know, people like to point to the story of Job, and yeah, I'm thinking of Batman here. I'm looking at Bubblegum Gun. I'm just thinking of the killing joke from Batman. Joker's point of view, all it takes is one bad day to turn a man insane.
Mm-hmm.
And he does all that crap to Jim Gordon and Barbara. But no, this is exactly the same instance. All it takes is enough pressure on a person to force them to change their views from a certain perspective. And Job, he's laying on the ground. He's stricken with boils. He's ill. His entire family, even except his wife, all of his kids are destroyed. His house is destroyed. His crops, his farm, all of his success is gone. And he curses God. And it takes his wife and his two friends in the story to convince him to turn back to God. Satan didn't say that he couldn't go back to God. He didn't say he couldn't repent or anything. He never said that he couldn't do any of that. All he said is that if he's pushed far enough, he's going to curse your name, God. And God's like, all right, go push him. Go push him. And the first time around, he's under orders not to hurt Job, not to directly wound Job at all. And Job stays faithful in that first instance. God wins. The second time around, though, he's given permission to hurt the flesh of Job directly. And he does so. And Job does indeed curse God's name. And that was the whole bet between God and Satan. And a lot of Christians tend to miss that. They tend to glaze over that, and they're like, no, you know, they focus on the fact that Job repented afterwards.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna just finish with that. It was just more of like, just, even within that story of Job, when we look at Satan and God, it's like, you know, why did God allow that? Like, you know, it's always this idea of like masochists being like these examples of how to be, you know, God fearing. But I question, like, if God is so great, why would he use me as an example for that? Why would he use Job as an example for that?
Sorry for interrupting you, Zagan. Guys, I gotta use the bathroom really quickly. I will be right back. Go ahead and continue without me.
Okay. That's, you know, that's the problem that I have with that story, and, you know, villainize Satan in that story, and I think it's misplaced. I think the blame should be really played on God for his mishaps and everything that he went. That's my opinion on that representation.
Christopher, might I suggest, if you go into your settings, you can click a button that's called echo cancellation. That way you won't hear the sound go loud on you like that. You're having what is called feedback. Yeah, we get a lot of that whenever my brother's rocking out with his band.
So that was on mine?
Yeah, if you go into your settings, you can turn off echo cancellation and it'll stop doing that. Then you won't have as many problems when your mic is open. Yeah, you're getting feedback. Your sound is coming back at you and going, it's rough. Yeah, that's what you guys were talking about earlier. It's one of the reasons for, I would say, quite a few years when I finally went from atheist to a theist. type of Christian. I was looking into a lot of stuff like Maltheism. Have you ever heard of that before, Zagan?
Yeah, I have. I've heard of it before.
Yeah, I was talking to, it looks like our friend is back. I was talking to him a little bit about that. For the longest time, I held on to this idea of Maltheism as a Christian, and boy, oh boy, a lot of religious folks did not like that. But I believe that God was capable of doing terrible things as well as good things. I believe that God was capable of absolute love, but absolute hate as well. I believe that there was a dual personality or mind going on there. But if you talk to other Christians about that, they'll treat you kind of like the Church of Satan treats you guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like there's these like get out of jail cards kind of thing. So it's like, like taking Maltheism, for example, and saying, well, he can be good and also not so good. Oh no, well, his his whole will is a mystery. It's God's plan, so we can't comprehend it. But it's like, if we all look at patterns, we see like, okay, that's kind of wrong. Like, why did so many people have to die in a tsunami? Why did Job have to go through that? Why did we have to have a flood, in such a violent way? Why did violence have to take place in order for change to happen from this benevolent God? And so, the concept that he can understand good and bad is very, I guess, leaving the delusion of like, oh, it's a mystery and it all makes sense and it's all good at the end of the day. Like, sometimes the day sucks and sometimes things happen and we to this day don't understand what happened. And that doesn't excuse the idea that, well, everything's great because we're in God's hands. Well, like, sometimes being in God's hands really sucks because it's like, why did these horrible things have to happen when I'm trying to live my best life, when I'm trying to be good to my neighbor and love my neighbor, when I'm trying to, pay my taxes on time? I mean, all this kind of stuff. It's just unfair and doesn't seem like no matter what I do with the good sense is going to be paid off within that paradigm. It's just suffering. That's what it seems like.
I agree. And I do believe the philosophy, whenever talking to some religious folks, they say, well, God, he's not capable of doing evil or bad things, but that's not biblical. Isaiah 45:7 says, I form the light and the darkness. I create peace and evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And it's surprising and sad how many folks I've talked to, and they did not read their Bible, or they would not have been shocked or stunned whenever I read it off to them.
I find it very surprising on how many Satanists are actually well versed in the Bible, far better than most Christians. I also find it similarly very funny on how many real Satanists are well versed in Anton LaVey versus Church Satan members who don't even know their own Church Satan history. It's very funny. We're sitting here. We only have one Christian on this talk show, and the rest of us are all Satanists and everything, and yet we're able to speak more cohesively about the Bible and Christianity than most Christian talk shows that I've seen like this, where you get a group of Christians together. They just start quoting things and they have literal no understanding of what they're talking about. I find that very funny.
I agree. I've seen things just kind of fall apart real quickly for some people out there. And, it says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge.
Yeah. It's definitely very interesting. And we see that in so many different things. We saw that in the Jansang file, Quo Vadis. We saw that in the Barton Jansang letter. We see that in almost everything that we're talking about here. In modern Satanism, currently we see TST members running around on the streets, literally violating the very the founding tenets of Satanism. They're making up their own stuff that has nothing to do with Satanism, and they have no concept. I can't tell you how many TST members I've met that didn't even know Anton LaVey existed. They didn't even have any concept of the Church of Satan. They'd heard of it peripherally, but they had no understanding of it or of the philosophy, which was like 90% of the TST members that I've met out there. A lot of them, I would say about 70% I'd heard of him, but there was a large percentage who surprisingly had never heard of him.
We got rebuke and reprove. He's a Christian who absolutely thinks I'm a disgusting, gross religious person. He says, no one on the panel has learned how to read the Bible. The word is calamity, not moral evil. Unfortunately for you, the Bible claims that God created all things. It doesn't say, but he didn't do that. You know, he doesn't pull a meatloaf. I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. So I don't know.
Yeah. I'm also going to say, unfortunately for you, you're also dealing with people on this panel that has gone to seminary school. You're dealing with at least one person on this panel who is a former Catholic bishop. We certainly do know how to read the Bible far better than you, obviously, because if you hadn't learned how to read the Bible and if you had studied it properly, you wouldn't be mouthing off. Now you can get out of my panel right now because you're gone.
4-year Nazarene pastor right here.
I am curious to understand what they're trying to put out there.
Oh, he's blocking me from doing it. Can one of our security personnel please go in and double check on YouTube to make sure this individual is not commenting on YouTube? We'll see it in our back end, but at least other people won't have to see it, and we can just tell them to go piss up a rope.
Yeah, so you've probably heard the discussions. I still don't understand where a lot of these folks are coming from, because if God created objective morality, then he would have had to create the negative as well as the positive. There's no way around it. You can't have free will without the potential to do evil or good or make the right choices. So I don't know what they're getting at.
Yeah. So yeah. You're exactly right. If you remember me mentioning about my near-death experience, I can't really say near-death. I was actually dead. I said that my experience, my perception of God was that I got a sense of complete malevolence from a hatred and whatnot. One thing that most people need to understand is, in order to have a sense of hatred of something, you have to have also a sense of love. You have to know and understand what love is in order to hate. So, that's something that a lot of people don't get. You've been mentioning about the dichotomy between God and Satan, that God in the Bible says that he created both good and evil. And, Satan acknowledges that both good and evil must also exist at the same time. He doesn't say that he created it. He just says, it exists. So I'm just going to let somebody take up if they have any comments.
Well, I've been waiting for somebody out there in the comments to actually explain how they think objective morality works. I hear these debates all the time that God gives us morality, he's wired it into us. So if that's true, then we have the potential to do bad or good. That's the type of nature we have. What's the issue?
Exactly.
Yeah, I just, when it comes to morality and if it's inherent or not, I mean, I've read plenty of atheist writers discuss the whole concept of having morality outside the confines of a religion. And like I said, there are some universal things that we can all say that are moral and not so moral. Yeah, there's some very specific things in different cultures. Like some cultures value the ability to steal and see that as something to glorify, to strive for. In the West, not so much, Middle East, not so much either. So, I mean, like that, the whole idea of morality coming straight from God, or being in our genetic code, those sort of dualities, I just, that's where I come to Satanism, because it brings me to the point where there's more to just that, where it's like good and bad, where it's just the things that God says are good, and I'm just going to do the opposite of that because I'm a Satanist. No, I don't do what's sensible, what makes sense to my humanity. And if I really look at the behavior of God throughout the Bible, it's a very human, selfish. It's a human that feels a lot, and it kind of makes me feel like, okay, these prophets and all these people that wrote it, they were human, and how they experienced God was in a very human way. So for them to, for people to think that God is just this out there thing that we can't understand, I think it's really irrelevant, and I think it's wrong, way off. And he's very human, very, selfish, very jealous. But, I'm the type of person to think that there's more sensibility to the humanity that we can accomplish than just living off of whims. And it's a power dichotomy. It's, if I have enough power, then I can exert more power and dominance. That's not the kind of life I want to live.
I'm going to say, go ahead, Kane, Chris, share your viewpoints on it. But before you do, I'm going to remind everybody that in the Satanic Thulian Society, we follow what is called the Lex Satanicus, or the law of the Satanist. And the very first law of the Satanist concerns morality directly. And this law says morality is a lie. Morality is a pretty lie told by the society in order to hide behind the facade of social acceptability, and at times to escape one's own responsibilities. Interchangeable it is, at any moment and in any culture, to escape wrongdoings by making them the moral and social rights. So that's what it says in Lex Satanicus about morality. I'm going to turn the mic back over to Kane and Chris, and I'd like to hear their views and opinions on morality.
Am I still echoing? Or am I good?
You're good when you talk. It's sometimes you get a little bit of the echo. All you got to do is go in your settings and turn off echo, and you're good.
I did that. I turned off the fan just to make sure maybe that was what y'all were hearing.
You're good now. You're coming through nice and clear.
So I believe that overall, the objective morality, the natural morality.
No backwash from your mind.
What?
There's no rumbling coming from your mic right now, so you're good. You figured out the problem.
Okay. Well, I believe that true morality or objective morality is, natural law put into action. We sit there and, we say, where is God? And you have the pictures of the little kids starving to death, and that is the morality of the universe. Kid starves to death, and then you got that vulture that's eating. That is the morality of the universe, and the objective morality is just rough and harsh. I think the morality that we think of is often subjective morality, and then the more people that agree on that subjective morality make it crowd morality, and that's the agreed upon morality that we, like you were saying, agree on as a whole, which is why things change. Morale areas change, like the topic of abortion, is because how many people are voting for that particular way of thinking is what defines the morality for the subjective or the group mentality, in my opinion.
I agree with your view and your perception on quite a bit of what you said. But usually when religious people and non-believers are arguing about the concept, they're basically stating that there is a morality outside of what humans think is right and wrong. I'll give you an example. If we were talking to like a Church of Satan member right now and we were to ask them, is murdering a child after raping them absolutely good? They're going to say absolutely no. They're going to be against that. Even one of their tenets is don't harm children, right? Where do they get that view, and can they take it beyond their subjective opinion? And that's where you start bringing in the philosophy of spirituality. You see what I mean?
You're absolutely right there. Church of Satan members, at least during Anton LaVey's time, certainly would never have done that. But when you get to Satanic Temple members, and I have this directly from a former Satanic Temple member out in Washington State. The guy calls himself Mega Sterling. He now runs Defenders of Satan. He was telling us about how he and his wife had been former members of the Satanic Temple, and they were, the final straw for them is that they had been invited to a party at one of the other members' houses, and they were already getting pretty fed up with a lot of the things that were going on in general. But this party turned out to be nothing more than a drinking orgy, a homosexual orgy. And I say that out of respect because Cain Blackfire of his sexuality, and so nobody mistakes my use of the term homosexual. It was a homosexual orgy that was involving children that were there. There was drugs going on there. There was cocaine open. There was drugs and alcohol literally out and about. And there was these two children who lived in the house that was in the middle of all this. And certainly there was adult men who, I will not go into describing what they were supposedly wearing or doing. That they were performing sexual acts around these children. And at least one or two instances, I believe he mentioned to me that some sexual acts or advances had been made towards these children. I don't know if anything in that moment happened, but I do know that there was another individual who, this one I will not directly name, but she lives in Atlanta. She is a former Satanic Temple member, and she flat out described how certain Satanic Temple groups were definitely using other children as, for sexual purposes. And I don't know whatever happened with it. I don't know if law enforcement got involved with it. Certainly law enforcement was notified of it, but nothing was ever mentioned in the newspapers. Nothing was ever mentioned anywhere else. And there's children who, these individuals who were definitely trying to normalize. I noticed Bubblegum Gun had mentioned normalizing the wrong. They were trying to normalize pedophilia. They were part of that movement to normalize pedophilia. And I'm sorry, but that's just not cool with me personally. But it does go towards the whole morality as a lie concept.
The letter that we read earlier about Anton's views on abortion and all this, if he didn't appeal to some kind of spirituality or philosophy to this, then someone could have just argued and whittled him down with nihilism and stated, we're nothing but chemicals, we're nothing but pond scum that evolved, so why does it matter? Jeffrey Dahmer made that case on why he killed a bunch of people and cannibalized. He said, if there is no God, then why should I go along with what man thinks is wrong or right? You see? That's why I believe that Anton, as well as many philosophers, have appealed to a spiritual essence or a supernatural being that creates our morality, so we didn't get stuck in those ruts, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And morality certainly does make sense. We have our Grotto Master, our Tennessee Grotto Master, making some very good points on morality in the comments. And I'm going to go ahead and bring that up. And He's very much so correct. Look at the morality of the Spartan society. When a baby was born with a disability or a deformity, it was taken out and bashed with a rock. And the same when a baby was born and it was set outside overnight. This was actually a custom in many cultures to set your child out overnight, even if it's freezing, to see if it survives. They wanted the strongest to survive. In our modern society, this is considered completely horrendous. I mean, certainly we've been talking about how abortion is horrendous and whatnot, but it goes towards pointing out the fact that morality is not genetically instilled in us. It's not divinely instilled in us. It is a societal construct, and therefore morality technically is a lie. It is dependent on the society and the social economics that you live in, on what is morally just and right. I mean, certainly we would consider it morally abhorrent to leave a baby out, a freshly born baby, leave it out overnight to see if it survives, and then come collect it in the morning, and expect not to find it being devoured by wolves. Yet, that's what's happened in the past. Thank you, Johnny. Kane, what's your perspective on this?
Mine is that morality, there are certain things inside us that we know that are right and wrong, and it's just programmed already into us. And those things should never be changed. But morality, it seems, ever since, at least in my opinion, the 60s, it's always changing. Something's okay one day, and it's not the next day. Most of it's bullshit, and it's subjective person to person. But there are those underlying things that we just know are right and wrong. It's plain and simple.
If you don't mind me asking, you use an interesting word as you describe that, which I agree with you, by the way, but you say it's programmed into you. You just know down in your depth, in your substance, that something is wrong, and we don't want to go that route. Anton himself said, you're going to see society fall if you allow this type of path to go. Is that, did I interpret that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, that's how I would have taken it in the same way. I mean, the society is always changing. It's forever changing. It's alive. And you do not have to go along with what comes into being. I mean, in my opinion, that's you just giving in and rolling over instead of standing by what you know was right and you know what is wrong.
We've seen a lot of the arguments, haven't we, from the people who do want abortion, who feel it's their, what is it called, health affirmation is what they call it.
Their bodily autonomy and whatnot. Well, certainly another rule in the Lex Satanicus says bodily autonomy is a privilege, not a human right. And personally, I have to agree with that. They try to say it's our human. It's a what is it? A human right to be able to kill an unborn child and whatnot. And going back to the whole morality concept, again, talking about the Spartans, I'm going to bring this back up, what Johnny had said earlier, talking about Spartans doing this. We would have found this morally reprehensible, but in their society, they wanted only the strongest children to survive because they were a warrior society. And, that's certainly he's right. Our society would go crazy over this, but morals are not genetically instilled in us. They are what's instilled in us with our parents. We learn our morality at our parents' knees and our society's teachings. So if our society is morally just, what we would consider morally just, in that it forbids abortion, it forbids harming innocent children for no good reason, if it forbids doing any of this stuff, then we would consider as adults that be morally justifiable. But Bubblegum Gun also made the very strong point that the political left are trying to normalize something that we would consider morally reprehensible. They are trying to normalize killing unborn babies, and in some instances killing babies after they're born for no good reason. The child is perfectly healthy, the mother is fine, the child is fine, there's no medical necessity, there's no medical deformities, there's no maladies or whatnot that would reduce the child or mother's quality of life. And like in New York State, they're passing laws where up to 6 days after the child is born, you can walk up to it and stick a spike in its head and suck out its brains, and it's considered perfectly fine. They're trying to normalize that. For most of us, especially of the political right, we find this absolutely abhorrent. But like Bubblegum said, they're trying to normalize it. They're also trying to normalize having sex with children. They're trying to say pedophilia isn't a crime. It's a sexual preference, and it should be allowed. And I don't know about you guys, but on a personal level, I find that absolutely repulsive. But then again, I'm also raised in the 1980s, not in the 1880s, where in the 1880s, a 40, 50-year-old man could marry a 12-year-old girl and have her bear his children, and it wasn't considered pedophilia.
When I'm listening to you, I love the language you use. You use the language that is right in this. You're saying this is a child that's being killed. It's a child that's being murdered. In order for them to be able to justify it in their own hearts and heads to do this, they have to devalue the life form. They have to say, it's not even alive. It's just a collection of cells. It's nothing more than,
They dehumanize it. They
Right.
absolutely dehumanize it. You see criminals doing this to like a person who intends on raping and murdering a woman in order to facilitate the most gruesome of acts towards them. They'll mask the victim and hide their face. They'll dehumanize them. They'll make them look like an animal or whatever, so that they can justify in their head that what they're doing is not to a human being. Recently, I've been playing Resident Evil 2, the remake, and one of the characters in it, his name is Chief Irons for our Raccoon City Police Department. He's the chief of police, and he's into all sorts of taxidermy. Well, you get into an orphanage area if you're playing as Claire Redfield, and you come to realize that Chief Irons is so bored with taxidermying animals that he's found a pig that he's going to kill in taxidermy. And you get into this orphanage area where he has his hidden taxidermy shop, and you realize it's the daughter of the mayor, and she's a beautiful young woman, and she's laying on the table, and she's blue skinned. It looks like she's dead and everything, but she's not turned into a zombie. And you realize that all the hints you feared from, if you read into the files and you understood the narrative of the games, you realize that this man who's the chief of police is a very repugnant, repulsive individual who is, in his mind, he's killing an animal. He's not hurting a human being. He's not hurting the daughter of another individual. He's hurting an animal. He's calling it a pig. He's dehumanizing her. And all just so he can taxidermy her. And that's what we see these political leftists trying to do all the time. They dehumanize the infant. They dehumanize the child, because even they, in their own minds, cannot bear the brunt of the magnitude of what inhuman practices that they're doing. They know that it's morally wrong by our society, and yet they still want to go out and do it. And so they dehumanize them. That's exactly what they're doing. They're just dehumanizing the person so they can justify doing absolutely horrible things to it.
Your friend Blackfire says in comments that his phone died. That's why he's not in the room, I suppose. You would, just to remind you earlier, you said something about wanting to ask me questions about TTOR in his video. I didn't fully watch it. As I said, I've been sick and everything. I watched a little bit of it, and obviously he appeared to try to give his interpretation of what your experience was. I myself, I would have never made a video like that myself, but he comes from a different background of Christianity than I do. For one, I was a former atheist, and I know that that's not the way to go at somebody, is where he decided to go full on internet psychologist, darn you. He's a good guy, though. I think that you guys would probably enjoy each other's company after a while, but he does like to do that.
I have no problem with that, and if, he's perfectly fine, and whatnot, as long as we get along and as long as he's respectful. That actually brings up another topic I wanted to touch base on. I watched TTOR's after action report, or whatever you want to call it, on his interview with me when it was the first time that I came on. And, you guys were great when you were on the air together with me. But then in his personal video, he kind of made several mistakes that I wanted to touch base on. It. A lot of Christians don't seem to understand why Satanists become so hostile when we're talking to Christians. And it's because of things that TTOR said in his personal video, talking about our conversation and whatnot. He mentioned that he found me very pleasant, very kind to talk to, and that I definitely didn't come off like a normal Satanist that would have just been attack. And the reason being for that is we have most Christians have treat others like you would have them treat you. We would say, treat us how you would have us treat you. And that's something that Anton LaVey instilled in the Satanic Bible. And certainly, I don't know if you've watched TTOR's video about you guys talking with me the first time I came on the air with you guys. It was coming off and saying LeGivorden very loudly, very obviously, mockingly, and he was, being very not so cool and trying to say any Christian in their assault would have immediately identified those deities as evil spirits, as demons and whatnot. And I'd like to address that he's like, didn't you wonder why? And it was very condescending, very rude. And this is a big mistake that most Christians make with Satanists, most Christians make with anybody who's not a Christian. And then they wonder why they get treated so harshly later on. We're of the mindset that if you want us to treat you with respect, you need to treat us with respect, and then don't try to walk it back when you think that we're not looking. Personally, yes, I knew immediately that these deities were what most people would call demons, because in Christianity, and Brett, I'm pretty sure you will agree with me on this. I know everybody else who's a Satanist in the room, who's watching and everything, will agree with me on this, that the deities of old, the gods of old, and all these other cultures were demonized by the Catholic Church, by Christianity, and when that occurred, they became what we would identify as demons in Satanism, and they fell into the realms of Satanism and satanic practice, because anything that was not Christian was demonized, and it became satanic in the Christian point of view. So we see all these old gods like Anubis, Zeus, Osiris, Yin Lo Wang, and so on and so forth, who might have been kind, benevolent gods before. Once they get into the Christianized versions, they become evil. We certainly see Hades from Greek mythology, the god of the underworld, become demonized to being a variant form of the devil. And then in Dante's Inferno, he takes on his name of Pluto, and on the third level of hell, I believe it was, he's running around there all mad and insane because, why? What happened? We understand that the Greek underworld got turned into the pit of hell, and this was his kingdom once. So that's part of our mythology and our lore. Certainly, we understand that these beings are now considered demons, and we have no problem with that. That doesn't change the fact that they might be benevolent spirits. It doesn't make them evil spirits. And for anybody to say that something like that is an evil spirit to us, we look at like, okay, you have not studied, you've not done your research, you're just following blindly the Christian party line, just like how the Church of Satan likes to follow the atheist party line. We look at that very abhorrently. So that's my piece. I'm going to leave it rest there. I could lecture on for hours about it.
Yeah, I think it's funny that even the term daemon was demonized. Daemon originally meant muse, or a spirit that spoke to the people that were calling for him. So it's sort of like a guardian angel or a muse or something like that. And then Christianity demonized the word demon. So it's no longer
the first mention that we have of the word demon is actually in the story of Gilgamesh, where Gilgamesh goes after a demon who's not hurting anybody. He's a watchdog. He's a protector of a forest. And Gilgamesh goes and kills him for no good reason other than the fact that he's ugly. His face looks like it's made of intestines. And that's the only reason. He just goes out and he kills this demon for no other reason. So, yeah, we see that. You're exactly right, Chris. Even the term demon was demonized. When we see what demons actually what people consider demons is actually an elemental, or some people call them inhuman spirits. What it basically is, it's just a nature spirit that is set to guard something. It could be a nature spirit to guard a home, a piece of property, a treasure in some stories, or even a person. These are guardian spirits that, of course they're going to look vicious. They're going to look evil. And when their territory is violated or the thing that they're protecting is violated, they're going to come after whoever's doing it. They're just doing their job.
I'll go back later and take a look at what TTR said about that. And if I feel there's anything that comes off rough or raw, then I'll have a talk with him about it. I apologize if anything was offensive.
There was a lot there that was offensive, and the sad part is I was expecting it too. I kind of expected it, because that seems to be, and I know Chris and Zagan will verify this, and any Satanist watching right now, Kane, Johnny, they'll all verify this, that is the go-to tactic of most Christians, that they'll be nice to your face, and then behind your back they'll come off all holier than thou, and I don't know what. They're just very rude, and it's one of the reasons why many Satanists, many pagans, many occultists become very hostile and not willing to talk. Very much so in the same way that I've told the Church of Satan to go piss off, because they decided to do the same thing.
Yeah, I got some friends over on Rumble who are into paganism, and they're part of different groups. Obviously, it's an umbrella term, and unfortunately can't seem to get the other Christians to actually come into the room and have conversations with them, even though they're some of the nicest, most respectful, educated people that you could have a conversation with. It's sad. I think a lot of people, they do this whole judge a book by its cover, and they can't get beyond the label, and that's sad.
Well, I think too, you have to look at the starting point. And so if you look at the starting point of most Christians is can't question anything to begin with. So an open dialogue, even within Christians, is something that's forbidden. Let alone talking to, devil worshippers. So I think that's
Pretty
where
much so contrary to what we say when we say question everything.
yeah. So right. That's going to be the inherent issue, and I think it's also that we're able to talk with you, and that you seem really open minded to at least hear our side and really see it from our point of view while still holding your own, which is healthy debate is all about, no matter the topic. But in general, I think that's where the flaw lies in that the concept of why would I discuss? I'm not supposed to question these things, and I think that's also part of the reason why most Christians don't even read their own Bible, because it's like, wait a minute, this thing doesn't make quite sense as I read it, and different denominations are more literal than others, some not so much, or reinvent the whole concept of the Bible and God to their own liking, to whatever fits, like Leve say, atheistic Christians. So, in saying all that, it's just difficult to have that discussion with anybody about Christianity and come to understand what the Bible says or what any other perspective might be, because it's frowned upon. It's it's a sin to even question it. So I don't know. And so like like LeGivorden was saying, it's kind of expected at this moment that somebody's going to be rude behind our back, even if because they already come from a standpoint of like what I think and believe is correct and the only way. So why do I care what you're really saying? And as Satanists, we come from a different perspective. Is Satan is gonna show himself to us in different ways, in different fashions, true to the black flame. So in that regards, we don't live in a duality of I'm right and you're wrong. It's I'm trying to learn even more as to what I feel is this black flame. And that's the difference.
I think as long as one goes with the philosophy, and I know the philosophy is a little interchanged here, but if people are going to claim that they love other people and you want to do unto others and you want to be able to, it even goes so far as say love your enemy. If you're actually going to do that, then that doesn't involve insulting people, attacking people, demonizing people, and all this. It wouldn't make sense. It's a form of love I've never gotten accustomed to.
I'm going to quickly interrupt here. Johnny, you're not seeing all the comments because we are streaming to multiple platforms and whatnot. So you're on YouTube. Scott is on Facebook. And so, the only way that you guys are going to see each other's comments is if I put it up on the screen here. Yeah.
Looks like you got this program pretty figured out, man.
I'm starting to get there. There's still some things that I'm learning and whatnot, but I'm starting to get there. At least this time I'm not accidentally banning somebody who doesn't deserve it. All right, so, well, we've covered a lot of ground here and everything. I'm going to wrap it up here in about 12 minutes. We're going to kill it at about 3 hours. I think that's a pretty good length of time. We've covered plenty of ground here on numerous different topics. We've read at least, 3-4 different articles concerning different topics in Satanism. I think one of the most important things to take away from all this that is important to demonstrate and show is that atheists, they are certainly trying to invade and hijack many different religions. And I don't know what their whole prerogative is, other than the fact that they want to destroy religion. But they definitely they want to destroy religion. I don't understand the perspective behind it, yet I kind of do. Religion has been the source of many woes over the centuries, especially with Christianity during the burning times, with Islam randomly having jihads where they cut people's heads off and everything, light them on fire and doing all sorts of horrid stuff. Religion has been the source of a great source of extreme pain and suffering in the world. But at the same time, religion is, this is what I'm going to say, religion has also been the source of great inspiration. And it doesn't really matter if you're a Christian, if you're a Satanist, if you're a Buddhist, if you're a Muslim. Christianity, religion in general, has been the source of great suffering and woe, sometimes even great stupidity, but also great intellect and great beauty, great artwork. Anton LaVey in the Joe Pine Show made a very solid point when he said that certainly he believes in that God exists. Before he said that, he acknowledged that religion in general, especially Christianity, has been a wonderful source for many beautiful works of art, many beautiful works of literature and music, and just has taught people on how to be just really wonderful people in general. He doesn't feel, and when people who actually study the Satanic Bible and actually read it through and understand Satanism, and whatnot, anybody who's actually studied Satanism will understand that, it's not for everybody. Certainly our religion is not always the gentlest of religions in philosophy, but it has certainly given us plenty of food for thought, plenty of things to be aware of, and has inspired us to be the best person that we can be. And I believe at the end of the day, that is the ultimate goal of modern religion, that it is something that we should separate away from the politics of our society. It is no longer a political system and should never be a political system again. It is the oldest of political systems, but I believe that religion should never be done away with, because religion has inspired so much beauty and it has guided so many people through, as Scott said, hard times in their lives. And where one religion may fail a person, another religion may instill something in them to be the best person that they can ever be. And certainly for me, Christianity failed. I will never go back to Christianity. I lost my faith in it. Also, I was a Wiccan for a long time. I cherished my time as a Wiccan and studying it and everything. But at the end of the day, it didn't jive with me completely. Being a Satanist, I've been able to, push myself to become far better. When I was younger, I walked away from a white collar family. I walked away from a lot of money, and I decided that I was going to make my own mark in the world. And for years, it just wasn't going anywhere, following the right-hand path, following the white light traditions. But the moment I started getting into the left-hand path, I started motivating myself. I taught myself on how to write books and edit and use software and learn how to do digital art and do all these other things. And now in my 40s, I've certainly gone through some hard times and some very rough times, but now, as people No, I published numerous books. I published a magazine. I own my own home. I own almost 4 acres of land. And this is stuff that I have accomplished in my life. And I attribute my faith, my religion, to much of it. And I'm certain, many Christians will say the same thing. Many other Satanists will say the same thing. Many Buddhists will say the same thing. All of it is true. And any religion, no matter what, will lead you to that if you have complete faith in it, if it vibes with you. The last thing I will say on this is that you should never try to change yourself to fit into a religion. You should find a religion that describes you as you naturally are, as you naturally think, as you are instinctively, and then just adopt that. This is why we say Satanists are never born, or Satanists are born. They are never created. They are never converted. They are born. Satanists, this is just how you naturally are. If you agree with what we say, if you agree with what we believe, if you agree with the Satanic Bible, then all that is left for you to do when you see yourself in that book is to just simply take on a mantle of Satanist. And that's it. And that's where I'm going to leave my lecture on this off, and I'm going to open up the mic to Zagan and Brett and Christopher. I'm also going to, within this next 5 minutes, if anybody wants to, if they have anything to add or say, they can. If any STS members who have our link want to jump in, you can certainly do. We will bring you onto the air really quickly for you to commentate and share your views and opinions with us on the air. And just make sure you have a working mic and whatnot. You don't have to have a camera on if you don't want it.
I'm going to touch base on the whole choosing which religion fits you best part. Because I'm sitting here thinking about the people that get into Satanism, LeVein Satanism specifically, and then they get further down the line and they try changing things. And I'm like, everything's laid out for you in the very beginning. We put all of our tenets out there. You got the rules of the earth, you have the satanic statements, you have the satanic sins, all laying out the LeVein philosophy of what we are or are not about. So I don't understand how you get 5 years down the road and you're like, yeah, I agreed with all of that. I claim to be 100% Satanist, but I'm not going to go with that. So I'm just going to blacklight that and move on. I mean, if it doesn't fit with you, there's no point in saying, I like Kool-Aid, so I'm just going to keep adding water until, I have water, and I'm going to still say I like Kool-Aid. Just say you don't like Kool-Aid, like you like water. When it's no longer what you like, when it's no longer what it originally is, change the name. Don't hold on to the same title anymore. Find something else that fits you better. Even in Christianity, you have so many different denominations to get you to the same place, but they're all matched to fit people with different personalities. A Southern Baptist and a Pentecostal aren't exactly going to, feel comfortable in each other's churches, but they both have the same idea of where they want to go and the same goal to get there. If you switch them out, they probably go, this isn't for me, and they probably leave and find a different church family. I would think the same would be for a natural Satanist. You should be able to fall in line with everything. Everything should fall in line with you. And if any of that stuff doesn't kosher with you, get out and go somewhere else. Right, it's all laid out. We give you specifically everything you need to know.
There's a reason why we have different denominations.
I agree with what you guys have said. I guess my suggestion for people out there, especially if there's Christians watching from my channel, please don't go making a video unpackaging someone's testimony, whether it's a testimony for Jesus or a testimony about Satanism or whatever the case might be. If you want to learn about someone's views, then interact with them directly and talk to them so you can have a better understanding where they're coming from. No Christian out there, I guarantee you wouldn't want to make a video where you share the most personal, intimate experience and then have 10,000 people unpackage you to tell you what they think you ought to be saying. It's offensive. So just think about it, what you would do in that position. All right, that's all I got.
You're absolutely right there, Brett. Absolutely 100% right.
Yeah, it just to kind of, I guess, final thoughts on my end. Um, like, where I can speak for myself and say that this was something that I felt very inherently since childhood. No, this isn't something that I'm lashing out against my parents because they didn't take me out when I wanted to or get me all the brand new toys when I wanted. They did. They were great, actually. They were great parents when it came to that. So it's not, oh, I come from this or that. Like, there's no reason is that you can say, well, this is where it went wrong with him, and this is why he is the way he is. It's just an act. Like, it's not. It's more of like things happen theistically in my life that led me to this path at a very early age, and things are just adding up. So and that's why I'm so passionate about correcting what it really is. It's not atheistic because I don't know how. Well, I'm starting to like form different hypotheses of this, but when you enter a room, I'm sure if like it might be something similar to when you enter a church, but when you enter a ritual chamber, just entering it, you feel something. And how can you, as a counselor, somebody involved in mental health and who studied so much psychology, I can't go into a ritual chamber and say like, oh yeah, this is this, and I can explain it with psychology. Like, no, like something is happening here outside of my senses. And so how is somebody that has no educational background in psychology, mental health, a psychiatrist, gonna sit there and tell me what psychology, like what is happening psychologically in the ritual chamber to me? Like, it's like you don't understand what you're even talking about from an atheistic standpoint. So that's why I'm so passionate about trying to correct these wrongs, and that's why I'm so proud to be part of STS, because it's like we gotta correct this. It's the same if with Christianity, it's just they're saying, oh no, Jesus was whatever, and he's just some guy we made up, and all that stuff in the Old Testament isn't real, and the New Testament, it just worry about loving other people, and that's it. Like, no, there's so much in there too that people just swing their hands up to kind of match what they want, and that's the difference between a religion and a group mindset. It's a religion is something that it's there and you are part of it or not. And if you're not, don't try to change it. Like, Chris was saying. So, in saying all that, people may criticize where we came from, what we do. That's fine. At the end of the day, though, this is my reality and this is my experience. And if it was so easily dissuaded, like, say, Job was, then I would have left a long time ago. But here I am, almost 40 years strong in this, and it's not going to change.
That's all really good statements right there. And, we're now a little bit over 3 hours. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up, guys. But I wanted to say thank you to everybody who's come out tonight, who's watched us and joined us, left comments, tried to troll us because they didn't like us. I know that we have Church of Satan members also watching, and I hope that they listen and they rewatch and they go back over the Barton Letter and they realize what was said there, and they go back over the Quo Vadis and they start looking back over the Jansang files. Certainly we'll investigate the Jansang files in a more complete way in future videos and live streams and everything else. I'm going to leave people off with one final thought. As long as you are true to yourself, you can't go wrong. As long as you are honest with yourself, you can never be dissuaded. The moment you start lying to yourself, the moment you start trying to convince yourself of something that you don't honestly believe, is when you fail utterly. If you feel that way naturally, if you believe in something naturally, if it has helped you, if it has enriched your life, then stay with it. It doesn't matter if people try to criticize you. It doesn't matter if people want to do anything. The moment somebody tries to troll you because they don't like what you're saying, the moment somebody tries to change the narrative, to flip the script, to try to make it sound like you're saying something that you're not, you've won, so long as you stay true to yourself. Certainly, as Brett pointed out, we have trolls that are Church Satan members who no doubt are on Twitter right now screaming. And I certainly hope that they do. Because they're screaming because they know that they are losing and that they know that they are wrong. Because there are people here. We certainly have Brett, a Christian, former atheist. We have Chris, who is former Church of Satan and Temple of the Vampire himself. We have former Catholic bishops and others, me being a former Wiccan, former Southern Baptist, even before that, and whatnot, who's gone through seminary school and has devoted my life to the study of religion. We have all these people who are great minds, who've chosen to come onto this channel to share our live streams with each other. And even though we get criticized for it, we stick together. And that's the most important thing. Why do we stick together? Because we know that we are right as long as we are honest with ourselves. And that's where I'm going to leave everybody off at. Brett, thank you for joining us tonight.
Well,
Yes,
I
thank you,
hope
Brett.
to have more awesome open discussions with you guys.
And we certainly look forward to having you on again. Chris?
I want to touch base on something that was said earlier, real quick. Brett, Lucifer had talked to you about or asked me if I wanted to share with you what I did for a living. And sometime when it's just us on a personal level, I'd be happy to share some of those stories he was talking about. So I just wanted you to know it's nothing against you personally.
Oh, I
It's just that
understand.
he
You guys are
didn't
getting to
want to
know me
public.
and trying to figure out what I'm all about. I get it. I wouldn't expect it any other way.
So we got, of course, we have people thanking us for a great show. Everybody else is heading out. And so we are going to head out ourselves. I want to say Ave Satanas, Rege Satanas, Hail Satan, Hail Thyself,
Hail Satan.
and Ultima Thule. My name is Lucifer, LeGivorden. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We will see you again and hopefully be doing more live streams in the future. And for all those Church of Satan members out there watching us and screaming, scream on, scream loud. You all have a good night.